3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bopcast. Today on the show, I have my man Alex Cortez.
Hello.
How we doing, man?
Pretty fucking all right. How about yourself?
I'm great, brother. I'm glad to see you here. I was on your podcast, which is, a trip for sure. I mean, not too far of a trip because you came to me, which I think is incredible.
I thought you meant the conversation was a trip. It was
that was a trip for sure. Yeah, I mean, your show is I get what you're trying to do, and I respect it because there's people that will go into this with a long form interview show, and a lot of them don't last because it's hard to try to have a direction while having no direction. And I've had that struggle myself for sure. And before we dive in, man, because I think we're just gonna go.
Fuck yeah.
And it's one of those interviews for sure. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to just give people a little bit of context on like what you're doing. And you can explain what you're doing right now. You can go into your background. That's up to you. But I just want to set that, and then we'll just kind of roll.
Cool. So just description of
why whatever you want to
what
say, man. Who is Alex?
who is, oh my God.
Or who is, I mean, you can, Neomatic Shaman, you can go into that too. It's up to you.
All right. So first I'll say I don't know entirely. And then so I'll give you some guesses. Some guesses about what Neomatic Shaman is. Oh, that's weird in the third person. But the podcast, man, traveling around the country is the goal. Talk to people, all different walks of life, and just have conversations with them. Now, I've had some goals about where those conversations should go in the past, but more and more I'm kind of just tapping into the embracing not knowing. Like, oh, I don't know exactly why I'm doing this. I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. I have some goals in mind, like values. There's a part of me like, oh, I want to figure out what people really care about in life and just what can be enjoyable in conversations. But largely, I'm embracing more and more a question mark. And still, this desire to dive in and talk to people is there. So I'm still listening to it. It still feels worth it, maybe. Yeah.
Do you think it was there before you started doing the podcast, like way before, or was this just something like more of the podcast came in as an idea? Like, what was first, kind of like the chicken or the egg? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, were you predisposed to do a podcast in terms of the way that you interact with people? Like, were you having those types of deeper conversations anyway? Or did you start to form them when you started doing the podcast?
There's a great 1-episode podcast on YouTube called by Naval Ravikant, and he's breaking down a lot of great ways to be an entrepreneur, financially independent, things along those lines. And one of the big things he talks about is capitalizing on the internet age, where before, if someone just told you, go follow your heart, follow your passion, but pretty much the only jobs around are like in a factory, it's like, that's not great advice. You're not going to get very far. But now with the internet, there's a great market, at least as far as he says, for niche businesses, right? So like, okay, you have access to the literal world on the internet. So if you just find, there's a rule of thumb, I'm sure you read it in one of Tim Ferriss's book, 1,000 loyal followers, you just get that, and you're making a living now. You get like 50,000 casual viewers, like, okay, this is my job now. So as he was breaking that down, he talked about, I may get the specifics wrong, but it was something like, find something you're deeply interested in, 1, something that people have a craving for but don't know how to get, and 3, your natural skills, like what are you naturally good at. And if you can wrap all those 3 together into a nice bow, that's a great kit for starting your own business and increasing probabilities of successfulness. So I was investigating my own mind, because going into the average 9 to 5, I don't want to knock anybody who does that. Like, do your thing, man. But for me, if I could, unless I have like a family or something that needs, like, I need money now, I need to take care of this, I always wanted to avoid that sort of lifestyle, find a different route. So I was exploring, brainstorming all these different potentials I could go down in the business realm, and podcasting is one that stood out because, to answer your question, having deep conversations with people, I've noticed that's something, I don't know if it's not to suck my own dick, but a natural skill or something I'm just interested in. It might be a little combination of two, because I've noticed that I've been able to get with people that are strangers, when we just sit down and talk for a while, we can get into some deep topics. Like, people I barely know are telling me like an hour into talking, times they almost kill themselves, like some of their biggest regrets in life, because this is the kind of thing I'm interested in, it seems. So I'll dig into that, and I love getting to know the deeper parts of who a person is. And when I combine that with America, at the moment, it seems like there was a lot of tensions between our own citizens, a lot of not really, this was my sense of it anyway, not really knowing who people are. You only get this caricatured version through the internet, or however you're getting your information about the rest of our country. And it seems like people's understanding of who their fellow citizens were was so malformed that it could potentially lead to poorly functioning governments. It could lead to, at its extreme, civil wars, things along those lines. And so I was just curious, like, are these caricatures true? Are there really genuine reasons for these intense tensions, or is it a lot of illusion? Is it a lot of, I just don't understand who you are, and what I think you are is this horrible thing, and so I don't even want to talk to you, you're my enemy. But if I just sit down and talk with you, actually talk with you, not some third party telling me who you are, I've found oftentimes that a lot of people are pretty wonderful. I have this, maybe it's a naive hope that there isn't a necessity for civil war, things along those lines, that if we actually sat down at the table and talked, we could find a common ground. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I got into podcasting. Yeah. And then sparked this travel around America, talk to all different people.
And I want to get into that for sure, but did the podcast confirm what you thought? Did it confirm what you thought about the conversations that you would have, or is it different than what you thought it was going to be?
See, this is a tricky thing for me to figure out what the truth to this answer is, because
could be a bad question. I don't really,
no, it's a good question. I think the problem being that I wonder sometimes if I'm biased. Like, if I sit down and talk with someone, do I want the answer to be that no, everything's good, we can actually sit down and achieve harmony? Do I want that to be so true that I'm going to start cherry picking information from this person? I'm going to purposely go into the conversation trying to get a yes to that question. So I'm wondering sometimes, am I biased? Am I getting a poor sampling of these people when I talk to them? And so keeping that in mind for a second, yes, a lot of the evidence has seemed to point towards there is a lot of room for harmony that isn't being taken advantage of at the moment. That being said, I still have a lot more travel to do. I need to talk to a lot more people to get a more accurate assessment. So I'm not sure yet.
And you've done about 40 episodes now, and the podcast is called Spirit of the Nation.
Spirit of a Nation.
Of a Nation.
Yes. And
so it's a nation, not the nation.
Yes,
I see.
sir.
I like that.
Yeah, I wanted to...
It's ambiguous enough.
And there was a part of me that almost wanted to humble America, because when I had this view of what America is, there was almost like, no, we are the country. We're like the kick-ass, top of the world, most important thing. And there was a part of me that felt like maybe we need some humbling at the moment. Like, no, we're a country in the vast scheme of all the countries that have ever existed or do exist. And it's important to remember that. Like, we're not immune to all the faults that many countries have come to. So that was one of the reasons behind that. Oh, but I might be changing the name soon to American Zeitgeist, because as it turns out, there are other things called Spirit of a Nation that will pop up first, unfortunately.
Well, see, this is why we do the SEO first, baby.
Literally.
All I'm saying.
No, I did it foolishly. I did it on Google, didn't find anything, but as soon as I typed it into YouTube afterwards, there's a bunch of Native American songs. But neomatic.shaman, if you type that in along with Spirit of a Nation, you'll likely find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Yes.
We'll go into the podcast, but where did the Neomatic Shaman arise?
It was originally Nomadic Shaman. I love the idea of a shaman, someone who understands the spirit world, which is this very strange idea. I don't exactly know what the fuck it means, but something about it resonated with me, so I like this. I almost felt like we lack the shaman in today's culture, someone who can understand the spirits, which at the moment, sadly, that's the best word I have for it. And then nomad, right? The person who travels around, always moving from spot to spot. And then I added the neos, like, oh, I'm the new modern version of the nomad traveling around, trying to combine all those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like neo-shamanism or something like that.
Yeah, not neo-Nazi. That was an earlier.
That was an earlier iteration. Luckily, you switched sides. We got you back, dude. Good shit.
I've learned some new information. No, I was never a neo-Nazi.
I was hoping.
That would be a very interesting conversation.
For sure. I mean, you should have one of those, dude. We should both have
fuck
one.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was telling my last guest, too, I'm like, I do want to have conversations with different people, but I also just handpick every guest because if people fill my form out and then I don't say anything for a while, it's like, it's not because I don't want to have you on, it's just not yet. Like, I just let this thing happen. I just let it roll out. Like, whoever the next guest is whoever the next guest is. I don't have a formula or anything, you know? So, but I do want to get more people on who have these different views, but I also don't want to seek out people who have different views. Not that that's bad. I just don't want to seek anybody out. I really just want to let it happen. Like, I've probably reached out. I haven't reached out to somebody to be on probably in like a couple years, I would say. Like, I have reached out to people, but people who would reached out before or those who I already told that I would have on. But I'm not, like, what I'm saying is I'm not actively searching. It kind of just happens now.
What do you say? So how do you get people on? Like, what are some
people
of the examples?
Hit me up. Yeah, so like I get the best guests from my guests, right? Because they understand the show and they understand what you have to do, which is sit down and like talk for a long period of time, which is not something that people do all the time.
Especially nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not something that people do not recorded, let alone recorded. I've done a lot of these, so I have the reps in, but like your general population, this isn't something that people are going to do all the time. So the guests do bring me typically really great people, and I have some friends who have businesses or clients, and they'll send my form to people, and they'll fill it out. So then I'll get I have a friend, Gabby, who we had on, fantastic episode. She's a business owner, co-owns a studio with her husband as well, and she sent the form to a bunch of people. She has a ton of female clients, and they were all these, girls who were just killing it, and these ladies who were killing it and had their own businesses and whatever. So I'm like, okay, perfect. That's a pool of people I would never be able to tap into. I'm not going to have 12 of them on at one time, but it's like, all right, I want to kind of do that. Like, I want to tap into these pools of people who are pursuing, but under the radar. And so that's kind of like the gist of the podcast a little bit. So it's kind of against not against, but it's just not what I typically, it doesn't fit for me to go and just like hunt down. I kind of just let it come. But in terms of, now the clips that I put on Instagram, they have, which I've been making them for years. Like each clip I make, I try to get better. And now it's to the point where I can suggest for an artist to be on, and it's not a question. They're just like, yeah, sure, he's like, email me or whatever. Whereas years before, they wouldn't even answer, So now the appearance of the podcast gets me a lot better, a lot higher quality guests, I would think. So that's but that's 4 years, that's 4 years down the line. That's 100 vertical video clips.
Nice. For
those clips I just checked, I got like, what was it? 115,000 impressions over the last 90 days or something.
What's an impression? So
an impression is when somebody scrolls over your video. Like, they don't have to watch it. They could watch it, but they could just be scrolling over it. That's an impression. And then I think a view is counted when they watch it, I guess, for a certain period of time maybe, or they stay on the video. But anyway, I mean, the point being, I'm able to reach a lot of people, and not a lot of them are turning into, I do have some that are turning into subscribers and followers, but the fact that it is reaching more people, that's elevating the appearance. And people's opinion of it. And that has changed the guests, the level of the guests, for me. So, and that's just one thing. Like, what I say to people is pick an angle. I just chose this vertical video angle, but
what's vertical video angle?
So it's basically, vertical video like that you'd watch on TikTok, like a video that's straight up and down, literally vertical. So we'll take where you're sitting right now and I'll cut you into a vertical, instead of 1080 by 1920, or instead of 1920 by 1080, I'll move it and it'll be 1080 by 1920. And that is the style that gets traction. So that's why I started doing that. Then I figured out how to do it my way. But it's just been that evolution of trying to figure out, like, what and like I don't know if you struggle with this, but it's like, how am I going to get this to thousands of people? Like, how do I get it to the people? Because you know how good it is. That's where I was at for years, you know? But we can go into my, podcast all day, man. But like, in terms of, is there a way that you do that? Like, is there a way that now, are you looking at these 40 episodes going, okay, yeah, this content's really good. It's better, because I know my content's better than the amount of people watching it. Even though I love the people who are listening and watching, I know it can reach tens and hundreds of thousands. So do you look at the numbers and stuff, and do you get caught up in that at all, or you're really focused on making the content right now?
Priority goes to content. I would love to put it on a setting where I don't even see the number of views, but that being said, I do want to get a higher viewership, right? And that is something I'm slowly putting more and more focus into. So the clips that you're putting on, like, that's maybe one of the best things that I found with the Joe Rogan podcast, is just watching the 10-15 minute clips on YouTube and then jumping from different podcasts to different podcasts, all these different subjects. So I need to start doing that. I feel like that would be a great way to get people involved, because to ask someone who doesn't even know what you're talking about, this, just sit down for like 2 hours and just listen to what you're talking about, that seems a bit much.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you got to think about it like this, man. We're competing. Somebody can pull our podcast up on YouTube, and then in the suggested is Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura. Like, you got murderers, dude. Like, why are they not going to watch the funniest podcast in the world? Like, why are they going to listen to ours, right? So it's like, that is a podcast struggle. And making it more accessible, because our job as interviewers or podcasters is to bridge the gap between maybe the guest or whatever the information is and the person that's listening. That's how I see it. I want it to be about the guest, but I also want to have things that are interesting or entertainment or informative or educational, whatever it might be. So that's kind of, I think about that too. I'm like, what are the alternatives? Like, I need mine to be so good for it to be at even close to that level. And I want to get to that. Like, I 100% will, because that's really my goal, is to, like, I think the more that you put into it, the more that you value it too. Like, when you get 3 cameras, like, there's going to be a point when you have 3 cameras, and then there's going to be a point when you multicam the whole thing. And it's just, you're not there yet. It's just going to happen, because you're going to say, I need to do this to go to the next level, But
I can't wait to have a producer in the background beautiful.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Find a tread, dude. I don't know. I got lucky, but
hey, fuck yeah, man. One day, just through the biggest part right now is I was focusing a lot on negotiating with myself, trying to give myself a workload that I'm actually willing to stick with for a long run. So a result of that seems to have been that I'm more lenient with myself. I'll lean more towards just content, keep it to a degree where it's enjoyable enough that I want to keep coming back, and slowly add more and more grind to it, more and more discomfort while I slowly build my callus. And at the moment, yeah, it's a bit much with it's several hours to put just one story up and all those different posts. So I can't wait to have someone who can do that, and I can just focus on content. I can have someone who's on the advertising section, making the stories, and all I really have to focus on is find a guest and have a wonderful conversation. That's the goal.
Yeah, sit down and go.
Yeah,
That's the ideal scenario. I want, if you don't mind, because we might lose some people on the podcasting subject. I don't want to go too crazy on that, even though it's my personal obsession. But we can always come back. I want to dive in your story a little bit. Okay. And I want you to tell whatever you want to tell. The people that are watching right now don't know, right? So, because they're just seeing you as you are. On your podcast, you're out there in the wild, baby, which I love what you do. But listen, I'm not saying you were in some kind of accident, I guess I could say, or can I classify it as that? I haven't talked to you about this. This is the first time. So I don't know if you want to talk about it here in the podcast. You don't have to. It's up to you. But I am curious. I just think that I may be completely wrong, but that is that defines you. Not defines your entire person, but if I were to backtrack in your life, that's a blip that would come up where I go, I would want to talk to him about that.
Yeah.
So, and now that's something you would ask your guests about, right? And so you're on the other side of this now, and so I want to ask you about it. And so if you could go into that, I'd love you to. If you want to just summarize maybe your story from 15, 16 on or whatever, you can go for it. But I'm going to just leave it there.
Okay, this is always a fun thing. I want you to ask me the deepest, like, most personal thing you could imagine with no filter, no worry about maybe you feel uncomfortable about this. Like, regarding this topic, just ask me literally whatever you want to ask me.
So, you have a prosthetic leg.
Yes.
How did it happen?
So, I was fucking around the construction site. I was 16.
You were working construction?
No, I was fucking around. Okay. It was in this Hobby Lobby that the husk of the store completely had been developed. So imagine the store like the size of Walmart, right? But no shelves or anything are inside of the store. So it's just this giant playground almost, which that was, being a suburb kid, that was one of the main playgrounds in the area. The construction sites that would be up in.
And where was this?
Sicklerville, New Jersey.
Got it. Yeah.
For anyone who ever happens to go near there, it's a Texas Roadhouse right next to a Hobby Lobby. That is the one. So I'm in there with my friend and we're fucking around, just climbing around stuff, exploring things along those lines. We're about to leave, about to go and smoke. We're totally sober, which is kind of funny for reasons I won't get into, and we see a forklift inside this building. My friend happens to walk by. He's like, oh shit, the keys are in this forklift. By the way, keep in mind, this is about 8 o'clock at night. All the lights are on in this building. So my friend naturally turns the forklift on. We start joyriding, and we're about to leave. As we're about to leave, I'm like, wait, you just finished recording me while I was driving. I didn't record you yet. I got to record you. But wouldn't it be so cool if we got a first-person view? So here's my genius idea. Imagine there's a seat to the forklift. There's a step that leads up to that seat. My friend's sitting driving, obviously. I'm standing on the step, right? There are these 4 metal poles, we'll call them, that's holding up the roof of the forklift. So imagine I'm standing on this step with my arm looped around one of these bars as my friend's driving around, like just recording that first-person view. He's driving, and he's driving slowly, like reasonably, not wacky or crazy at all, but we're going straight. And I can see maybe 10 seconds out, like, oh shit, I seem like I'm aligned with this support beam on the building, but nah, he's gonna turn. Like, nah, he's obviously gonna turn, right? We're getting closer, like, no, like he notices, like he's gonna turn, like everything's fine. And it just like closer and closer, denial, and then at like 2 seconds away from impact, my mind kind of just goes blank, and it just hits me like, oh, he has no idea that I'm about to just get squished against this forklift and the support beam. So at the last second, I jump off, and my leg gets caught between that bar I had my arm looped around and the support beam, and the forklift kept moving, and it just fucked up my leg. My shin right below my kneecap, imagine from right below the kneecap, is just bent at a 90-degree angle, the bone's sticking out, like it's just a gory mess. And I'll give you, it's a podcast, so I'll get into the nitty-gritty. So fucking, I'm on the ground, I'm like, ah! It's the weirdest thing, man. I closed my eyes when I jumped. So I knew that this is broken. On impact, I've never really like fractured my pinky before. That was the extent of my injuries. But I felt on this impact, oh no, this is shattered. But I had no idea that when I looked down, like, oh, the bone's sticking out, like this is... Somehow it clicked that this leg is not going to be there whenever I get done with the hospital that I obviously am going to have to go to. And so my friend sees it, like, oh fuck, he just sees blood. He doesn't know that the bone's sticking and all that shit. So he goes to pick me up and like, all right, you just cut. We're just going to like take you home because we're not that far from my house. So it was a little walk away. We're just going to take you there and patch you up and we'll be good. But picks me up, kind of like half drops me because I'm pretty heavy and it hurts like hell. So I'm like, no, fucking put me down. And he sees the bone stick and he's like, holy shit. Now it clicks. So he's freaking out. I'm pretty freaking out. And we're trying to figure out what to do. I stupidly pull the bone back in because I have this genius idea, like, what, I can just reset the bone. So I'm pulling it back in, trying to like fiddle with resettling it. And everything is numb. Like from the point of impact down, all that, it's you don't feel a thing. It's the weirdest fucking thing. The adrenaline's hit me, or whatever hits you when you get into a high stress situation like that. So I don't really feel any pain at the moment. Friend's freaking out, and he calls the police, obviously. And I'm like, all right, man, like, since we're in this little lot surrounded by a bunch of restaurants, go see if someone's an off-duty nurse or doctor or something. And so he's running back in and out of the construction site like, yeah, man, I found someone. And he does that several times, but no one ever comes. And at this point, I'm lying on the ground, holding my leg up above my heart because I hear that slows your bleeding. He gave me a shirt, so I just shoved the fucking shirt into the hole. And oh, dude, to imagine the rate at which blood is coming out. If you just take a bottle of water, I'm not shitting you, like just take a bottle of water and just dump it upside down. Like that's how blood is just pouring out of this hole that's like 2/4 4 like put together sized hole in my leg. And so yeah, eventually the police come. Funny side note, they're kind of annoyed, like, oh, these stupid kids probably hurt themselves. My shirt's covering the injury so they can't really see. The cop comes over to she's like, all right, remove that so we can assess the injury. I remove the shirt and she just kind of gags and turns away. So that gives you some idea of the level of injury. So yeah, eventually nurses come, they wrap me up, put me on an ambulance, and just immediately speed me over to Cooper. I have some pictures in my phone. If you remind me later, I'll show you. It's in my car, so I can't grab it. But I got a picture from my lawyer of just the blood splatter on the ground. And it was fucking like, just take a hose and just spray 5 feet by 5 feet just full of water. And that's blood. So it was fucking pretty intense. So anyway, I get shipped to the hospital. They give me all the legal amount of painkillers they can give me. By now, the adrenaline's worn off, and it just hurts like hell. Nothing's really helping. I get there, they're running me down the hallways like you see in the movies. They cut off all my clothes, and I don't know, they're asking me these questions like, what's your date of birth, what's your phone number, what's your address? I guess just making sure I'm lucid. And eventually I just get put under for surgery, right? Now, jump to my mom, who gets the phone call. Your son broke his leg, you gotta come to the hospital. That's all they told her. She comes to the hospital. There's a 2% chance we can save your son's leg. What do you want to do? My mom's like, I thought it was just broken. Like, what the fuck? So obviously she says try and save it. So fast forward to me waking up, and dude, just like my arms are strapped down, my legs are strapped down, my neck is strapped down. I have all these tubes going like in and out of me, and my vocal cords were disconnected, my lungs were disconnected because apparently I couldn't breathe by myself due to all the drugs they had me on. So I have these tubes going down my throat, and those few days were probably short term the worst part of the whole experience. Not the point of impact in the construction site, but just that, like having this weird itchy cough in the back of my throat. A nurse would come by and like vacuum spittle from the back of my throat because I couldn't swallow. And that nurse was a fucking angel, dude. She was on point the whole way through. She felt like like Mother Nature has come down to just bless you for a little bit in your time of need. And so yeah, eventually I get moved out of that. And here's the crazy part. While I was in the hospital, so like a week and a half, went through several surgeries trying to save a leg. Obviously they didn't work. I got an amputation above the knee, and this whatever, moving on. So while I'm there, every time I close my eyes, like literally if I just close my eyes for a second, I just see these black and white, like if you ever saw the scratchings an insane person makes in an asylum, like these really scratchy, fucked up drawings and artistry. It's just that, like this black and white gory imagery. And so I'm kind of going insane by the end of the point in the hospital, like, no, I fucking need to leave now. Like, why the fuck can't I just get out of here? Like, smelling these weird smells no one else smelled. It wasn't a great time. So eventually weird. Yes, it was very strange. So yeah. Oh, dude, I was in that bed for a few days and didn't get crutches or anything. So eventually they gave me a wheelchair. My dad walked me around, and just getting out of the room, I can't describe how wonderful it was. They have a little park in the, like literally just a 20-foot long park by the hospital. My dad walks me through there, just the air smelling. It's never smelled so beautiful before. So anywho, I get out of the hospital and it's just on to the next. But talking about this being an important blip deciding factor in my life, the biggest thing I would guess is not the fact that I had to learn to walk again and all that jazz. The biggest thing was that I had to rediscover a new love, because for several years before then I had ingrained in my head since like 8th grade, I know exactly what I want to do with my life. My dream job is decided. I'm gonna go into the military, get me a Navy SEAL. Like, that's it. That's fuck school, fuck everything else. That's what I'm doing, period. And so in the blink of an eye, that was just gone. And I'm 16, so I'm already about to be out of high school. I wasn't doing too well, so college was like, I can't get into a really good college anymore because I wasn't trying very much. So maybe keep in mind plan Bs even if you have your goal in mind. Maybe that's a different topic. So yeah, then that just sparked the beginning of a journey trying to rediscover purpose, something to do with my life that I would love doing. And several things happened. If you're curious, I can get into that later. And eventually that landed on me doing the podcast. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible story, man. Unfortunate, but still, the fact that...
Here's one of the weirdest things that it's weird to tangle with this, but...
Do your thing.
Years later, I might call that one of the best experiences of my life because of all the good things that came afterwards. And maybe I'm inappropriately calling that the causal link to all these good things that happened afterwards, but it seems a lot like it is, so I'll just go with that for now. That, yeah, all the good things that came afterwards are just like, holy shit. Years later, if you could tell me right now, would you go back in time and switch that? Get your leg back, get your dream back, all that jazz, but you have to lose all the things you gained. I don't think I'd do it. I don't know, because you never know till you're there, right? But I don't think I would go back and change it if I had to lose all the good that came after. Yeah.
I have two questions before we get into more of the details. My first one is, why do people feel weird asking you about it? Why do you think they do? Because it's not you, it's them. You see what I'm saying? Because I don't want to just come out and ask you about it, but I don't know why I don't want to. Because I'm not that close to you, but I'm close enough. I know you well enough that I know that I could ask you. And this happens to you probably a lot. So I mean, if it doesn't, then shit, I really don't know.
No, you're good, you're good.
I'm like, why is that?
That's excuse me. Maybe I just associate it to anytime someone has what you'd call a traumatic event in your life. Sometimes people just don't want to talk about it. Like if they went to war, some people just do not ever want to talk about it. Excuse me, I have the hiccups.
No problem.
Never want to talk about it again. Some people love to talk about it. I fall into the latter category. But I think there's a part of us that understands, or maybe there's a part of us that understands when you're treading into those waters, the waters of trauma, it could hurt someone so much just to like ask them, like maybe I just don't even want to step on that. Could be a landmine, right?
yeah. I guess that must be it, because I mean, especially if you've had any trauma as well, if you have things that you don't want to talk about, then you're gonna be like, well, this guy literally got his leg amputated, not sure if he's gonna want to go on that for 45 minutes, you know. Another one-off question: are you still friends with?
Oh yeah, brothers.
Okay. And they were with you, like they would, come to the hospital and stuff and see you and everything, and throughout the whole thing. And I mean, did your friend like apologize or anything, or like it wasn't like that, right? It seemed like it was a pretty innocent accident. I mean, it was a bad accident, but it seemed innocent enough. It didn't seem like he was purposely trying to be extremely reckless. Destroy your,
It was one of
your
just. There's a quote that is, I don't know, it's a million different things, but take from it what you will, that one of the most powerful influences in human history is stupidity. And just not knowing. I wouldn't call it stupidity exactly, but it was just an oops.
Well, what you guys were doing fundamentally was being 16. Even if I went out with my boys at 24, I'd be like, what crazy shit we getting into?
Literally, right?
What are we going to sit around and tell stories? I mean, we're not that old, but... When it comes to your recovery, and then you probably don't, there's back to normal, right? But there's not back to the same normal. Where's your mindset? Was there any, were you depressed at all? Were you sad about it?
No, it was jolly.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, but you're a super positive guy. Like you have this podcast. You're very interested in people. Like, I don't know. Like maybe your mindset. I don't know you back then. Maybe you were. I assume. Listen, me back then. If that somehow I was not emotionally correct in that area back then. So, but I'm curious about the kind of where your mind was at through that kind of recovery, and then the realization of, okay, I'm gonna have to go back to my life.
So first off, I could be wrong about this, but it seems like I'm a sensitive kind of person, and by that I mean when I feel an emotion, it seemed almost like, and I could just be over exaggerating this, but it seems almost like I'll feel an emotion like I'm more sensitive to it. I'll feel it stronger than the average person, let's say. And that's not always a good thing as it's bad. So like if I have lows, sometimes I've hit very low lows. And when you see me, I'll probably not share anxiety or depression or things along those lines with you emotionally if I'm interacting with a person generally. But yeah, I've had very low periods, very high points of guilt, shame, not with that specifically, other things, regret, sadness, frustration, so on and so forth. But I've also had very high highs. What was the other part of the question?
Well, I guess what was your emotions like in that period?
Oh, yeah.
Were they hitting highs? Were they hitting lows? Have you ever felt like, because I don't know, in my mind I'm like, okay, I'd be the most depressed I've ever been if that happened to me. Like, I'm just trying to paint as if like, and I truly don't know what it's like, but if I were to get, if somebody's like, hey, construction accident, got his leg amputated, want to be a Navy SEAL, I'm like, probably doesn't want to continue to live. You know, not to go there, but like for real, like if those were my ambitions and then that happened to me, I wouldn't be like you were, you know, joking about like jolly and ready to take on life, you know?
There's suicide never really crossed my mind. It's crossed my mind sometimes as a curiosity, not as like a genuine undertaking of life is so bad that seems like the best option. So that didn't really cross my mind, but my emotional response to it initially, I would not call very healthy in retrospect. It was very much the men don't cry mentality, right? Like, I don't feel bad. I don't feel sad. I'm fucking like stone cold, move on.
Your pressure, you put it down.
Yeah.
Just, nope.
My dad always taught me, like, when we were younger, I have a vivid memory when my grandpa passed away, like, you need to be strong for your mom, something along those lines. And at the time, I associated strength with men don't cry, right? And there's some truth to that. There are points, like, the example I always come to in my mind is, like, if you're on the battlefield and your brother dies, like, right next to you, that's not the time to cry. That's not time to freak out. You step over his body and you continue the mission, and you'll deal with that later. But it took me a long while to embrace the utility of tears, I'll say it like that, of feeling pain, allowing myself to dive deeply into sadness. And that happened years down the line, and I felt like that's actually been very useful in the healing process. A part of me wishes that I did that earlier, was willing to cry in front of people, willing to be sad. There was a vivid point in the hospital because everyone's coming in and I'm cracking jokes when people are in the hospital, like about losing the leg. It's very like chipper attitude. I almost feel like I'm a compassionate person at times, so this, again, not always a good thing. I'm not tuning my horn, but I like to kind of comfort people if I see you're in pain. So I saw people upset in the waiting room, or not waiting room, when they came to visit me, and I would try to like comfort them, like hold their hand, like, it's gonna be okay. But there was one night where like it just kind of broke. I was like just kind of screaming into my pillow, like crying, and my mom stayed with me the whole time. She like literally would sleep at the hospital, and I just kind of wished she wasn't there. Like, maybe that was a part of who I was and maybe still am at the moment. Like, I want to break down fully, but I don't want anyone to see.
That's natural. No, that makes sense.
Right? Although lately I've almost begun to admire the person who can be at the funeral and like, okay, it's time to carry the casket. You get your shit together, you carry the casket. If you can, you know, no shame onto you. If you can't, maybe, whatever. But I also want to be the person who can scream and wail and snot dribbling down my nose and like tears just flowing uncontrollably. I also want to be able to do that in front of people. That also seems very strong. That seems good.
Before I had a girlfriend, I really didn't cry at all for anything, but I feel like that.
Now the sunset gets me.
Whenever I see a little puppy, little puppy. She has a lot of influence on me. Now I just cry when I see a dog, a small dog. It completely changed the game for me.
Yes.
But no, but for sure, man. I mean, I feel like I was forced to, first of all, accept my emotions and then be in touch with them, and then like you're saying, like, dude, a fucking good cry is a good cry. It just kind of is, you know. It just feels right. And for sure, I've suppressed all of it, you know, until then, you know, until now. I'm starting to be really in touch with it, and I'm doing it with this other person, which is also making it a little bit easier, probably. It's like, but there is that value in it, the power of the cry.
Yeah.
I don't forget what you said.
No, but that's the essence, man. No, seriously. Okay, fuck it. I'll go into more story time and cut me off from talking too much.
Dude, this podcast. This is where it goes down, brother.
Perfect. So I went on an ayahuasca trip with my mom at some point, like a year ago. And for ayahuasca, if you don't know, it's an old shamanic medicine.
With your mom? Wait, let me jump in there. Is your parents are chill? I mean,
that's actually really funny.
Yeah, man, just drop DMT with my mom. We went to outer space and back.
She was very much like, don't smoke weed, do not like drink when you're a teenager.
That's what I pictured her
super
as being.
against that. Yeah, super duper. But for whatever reason, maybe it has to do with what you might deem as a credible source promoting it. Like, there are several psychologists who in recent years, Gabor Mate, Jordan Peterson have been some main ones who have talked about doing it. And this one quote I'm remembering from Gabor Mate, he's a great psychiatrist, whatever, specifically regarding addiction. Like, if you're ever curious about the realm of addiction, I highly recommend going to him. Anywho, and he talked about doing it, and that within the course of like a week, he was able to make breakthroughs that within 20 years of sitting down and doing the common psychotherapy, like it would take like 20 years to get the equivalent of breakthroughs he got in a week. And so my mom heard that, and she started doing her own investigation. I've heard about it from my own ways, so we kind of just clicked on this, and we're like, you want to do this? He's like, yeah, kind of do. I'm scared, but
like, it wasn't for the addiction benefits. This was for something. Why did you do it then? Right? Or was it for that?
It's not purely for addiction. What the ayahuasqueros, the shamans will tell you, well, at least the ones that we went to, said that ayahuasca shows you what you need to see, not exactly what you want to see, and that oftentimes that can be a healing sort of thing for many different realms of life.
The appeal for both of you was, this is just going to be a nice reset. It's going to be a healing. We're going to be able to, like, it's just going to improve you. It wasn't, so you weren't trying to do it to fix any specific thing about either of you. It's just an experience you're going to do together.
Maybe I could see my mom, and probably me too, just I maybe didn't analyze it as much, going there to heal in sort of ways. Like, we both had our traumas in the past and wanting to use this as a healing mechanism, but also, just general improvement. Like, can this give me some wonderful keys to prosperity or something like that I wouldn't really get anywhere else? And so I went there. The first night I did it, I've done shrooms before, I've done acid, ecstasy. If you ever do it, be very careful. These are powerful things that can go very wrong.
All of them are very powerful.
So I thought I knew what I was stepping into, because it's also in the realm of psychedelic. It's a very strange medicine, dude. The history behind making it, I've heard it was hundreds of years before scientific culture really started to evolve. It was very much made by people in the Amazon, finding these super rare herbs that are extremely far apart from one another. And apparently when scientists ask them, like, how the fuck did you know to combine these you have to cook it in a very specific way, like, how the fuck did you know to do any of this? And the response is, apparently, the plants told us. So science doesn't really know what the fuck to do with that at the moment. So it's a very strange origin. Anywho, so the first night I take it was shit. It was absolute, I'm not getting any crazy sights or revelations. Essentially, my stomach just hurts for like 6 hours, and I'm having these purges, we call it. If it was in another context, we'd call it vomiting, but purging.
But this is healing, baby.
Yeah, and it's cool to actually give it that sort of ritualistic meaning behind it.
I love all the ritual terms. Yeah, it makes it more fun.
Yes, yeah, and it like clicks to some, I don't know, some maybe primal part of you. Some
growing up, no. Purging.
Yes. And anywho, so the first night, I really just want it to be over. Like, this is uncomfortable. Like, I just want it to stop. I just want this discomfort to fucking stop. That was essentially the first night. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it again. We were supposed to do it 3 times in a week. And the day after that ayahuasca experience, because we would have a day off in between each time taking it. We went to Mexico to do it, by the way. There was like a place, sanctioned place, where like 10 other people came, and the shamans guide you through it. So anywho, and the night after, I'm just feeling like there's something inside of me I'm not releasing exactly. We had this circle, everyone gets together, talks about their ayahuasca experience, and it's wonderful. It's very open. Like, it's a sort of openness I would love to see more nowadays. Just average conversations and things like that. It's like the deepest vulnerabilities, people are just kind of letting it all hang out. And I felt like I was holding something back almost. So after that, I'm staring epically at the moon, because that's just the funny, truthful way to say it. and I start singing something that comes to mind, the song Hallelujah. And as I'm singing it, I just start to like break down in tears. And I forget the specifics of how it goes down, but I feel the urge to like scream out these like hateful words and thoughts that are coming into my mind, like almost a fuck you God kind of vibe. But there's this voice in the back of my head like, no, that's not appropriate to say. We don't say that. That's a bad route to go down. You don't want to do that. But for whatever reason, at that point, I just said, no, fuck that. I want to hear whatever this part of me has to say. So in short, people see that I'm there by myself, like screaming into a fucking towel because I don't want anyone to hear me. So the ayahuasqueros come over, they remove the towel, like, no, just like scream, like let it out. Don't hold it in. And for context, we're in this building pretty in the boonies like we are now. And I just start, and I'm a pretty loud guy, and I'm just screaming bloody murder out into the wind, full volume for like 10 minutes nonstop, like like my throat is feeling raw. And eventually one of the shamans say like, hey, don't damage your voice without giving a message to it, like put into words what this pain is saying. And I wasn't able to say all the things that I felt like I wanted to scream out because there's some shameful regrets I have that over time I'd love to be, I want to be able to share with people out in the air and just have it be open, but I'm not ready for that yet. So I inhibited a bit of that, but the part of myself that I did let scream, it showed me this part of myself that it's almost this is a guess, right? When you let that emotional part of you come to the surface, the crying, the rage, whatever it happens to be, that strong emotion, it's not just crying and rage. It almost seems to come with a voice of its own. Like it has all these thoughts, these own ideas it has, these things it wants and thinks maybe. And so I'm screaming out like, fuck you, God, things along those lines, like I hate myself, I hate this, that, and the other. And so yada, yada, yada. I forget exactly what I'm saying. But the shamans come over, like several other people I didn't even realize had gathered around, and they all just kind of put their arm on me. They sit down one of the shamans in front of me and just look into his eyes. And it was just an unflinching, and keep in mind, there's like the ocean behind him and a full moon, something beautiful. And I would like look up, but it wasn't nearly as beautiful as just looking into his eyes. And he said that he'll reflect back to me myself. And so I saw as I'm looking into his eyes, like rage, calm, nothing, rage, rage. And spontaneously, I just break out into like this huge giggle, this huge laugh. And he starts laughing because he's somehow perfectly mimicking whatever it is I'm feeling. Like he's just mirroring it back to me perfectly. It was crazy. And I can't put exactly into words how, but that seemed like a very healing experience, cathartic, letting out the emotion and getting to know that raw part of myself. Yeah.
What about your mom? Where's your mom in this whole thing?
Oh my God, my mom, that was that was pretty cool. There was one point in one of her experiences. Her first night was essentially like mine, right? Just a whole lot of, oh fuck, just let this be over with for the love of God. But then the second night, after some advice from the shamans, she gets to a point where she's seeing these visualizations of like an excavation squad going inside of her and like taking out all this different dirt, all this different mess, taking it off on a conveyor belt. She saw like these aliens come over and scan her body, and the scans would stop at certain points. And she said it was almost like they were healing it with light. It would go to a different part of her body, heal it. And when she felt perfectly healed, like this sort of blissful feeling, she said she extended her hands and just just shot beams of light at the other people doing ayahuasca. Like it was this healing energy. And when she felt like they all had enough, she just sent it up to the sky and released this sort of love and healing. She had images of her grandparents. Oh, and at one point there was this banner that kind of went across her vision. It was something like, if you don't use your creative energy, if you don't channel it, you're going to become sick. Like you're going to become really sick. And there were parts in it where she was like shaking uncontrollably. And the way she interpreted it later is like, this was the ayahuasca showing me an equivalent to what would happen if I don't explore my creative energies. Because this is my interpretation of it, she's been someone who's very much been on the grind mode for the family. Like, I'm going to grind, I'm going to make sure my family's set. But now that we're kind of moving on, birds flying the nest, that sort of thing, she was a bit lost, but still working, but kind of hated it, wasn't exactly sure. And it almost seemed like the stress was literally killing her. Like, injuring her. We have history of Alzheimer's in the family, so there's a very genuine risk. Like, if you stay in this highly toxic environment, and there's something different about when she's there but has a good reason to stay there, it almost seems like your body literally responds to the stress differently. But now that you don't genuinely want to be there, the stress has become almost poisonous and toxic. And vaguely I have memories of high stress leading to mental illness later on. So it almost seemed like the ayahuasca was showing her that, like, no, you're gonna lose control of yourself, your functions, if you don't channel this energy you have inside of you appropriately. And that was one of her experiences on the ayahuasca trip.
Now when I hear about the visualizations, because I've listened to so many podcasts about people talking about this, and I've never done this, now they don't seem crazy at all. Now I go, yep, that checks out. That's about, your mom is shooting light beams and you're yelling at the moon.
Yeah, that sums it up.
Sounds like ayahuasca.
Yes. Dude, and it's weird, like, the lessons that I took from that, like, they unravel over the course of months and years. Like, it's not over a week you change. It'll give you these seeds, and you have to keep watering them, and over time you'll recognize I'll speak dramatically, the profundity of what it showed you, but it'll take time.
Do you have anything specific that came out later that a realization you had later? And it might not be specific, but I'm curious.
No, there's one that comes to mind. I've been teetering around that time. I was leaning more towards the realm of play, of joy, having fun.
We talked about this a little bit too.
Yeah, in the moment. And there was this idea I had in my head that I was kind of avoiding, the Goggins ideal, right? The ideal of the person who, like, grinds to the absolute fucking limit, and that there's something golden to be found there, for some people, I'll say. And a part of me was, like, getting called towards that, but the playful side was like, no, that just seems so painful, like, not worth it, like, don't do that. And on the last ayahuasca experience, a funny rule of thumb the shamans gave was, if you ever aren't sure if you should take more ayahuasca in the middle of the ceremony, okay, I'll set the context first. They start this elaborate ceremony. We're all sitting in a circle.
This is the beginning, or this is during it?
This is during, and the story I'm about to talk about is my last ayahuasca experience. But for all of them, they, like, open the circle. They open the gate, right?
And how many of those do you have in total?
3 over the course of a week.
Got it.
It's like 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on. And so they'll open the window and everyone takes a shot of ayahuasca. Then, like, 20 minutes will pass as it sinks in, and they'll say the door is now open, which means for the duration of the 6 hours while you're going through this ceremony, you can take as many shots of ayahuasca as you want. If you go up there and get it yourself, you have to go up there and get it. They won't bring it to you. And keeping that in mind, with, if you ever are questioning, do you need ayahuasca, take another shot. The 2 ayahuasca experiences, I didn't follow that advice because it was painful. It was very unpleasant to continue taking the shots, which is a lot of tangents here, but the second night was almost pure bliss when I went into it. There was a lot of wonderful visualizations and great time I had, but I feel like I still didn't dive super deep into those waters. I didn't keep taking the shots when I had that question in my head. But the last night, I'm like, fuck it. Last day here. I don't want to leave here with the regret of not pushing it as far as I can go. So the last night, it's just shot after shot after shot after shot. And my stomach's in this incredible pain. The second night, they told me, okay, if you follow these 4 pillars, like love, light, peace, appreciation, something like that. And I was following these mantras in my head, essentially repeating these words, and that actually made it a very pleasant experience. Like, it was strange, but I just kept repeating those words in my head, kind of made a song out of it, and it made it this wonderful experience. And on the last night, for whatever reason, I just kept asking, you're supposed to go into it with an intention, and my intention for the last night is like, what does God need me to see most? And I was like, oh, that's a fucking, I didn't really want to ask that, because I knew that could just mean, what if God just wants me to hurt like hell to the nth degree? I don't want to do that. But on this night, I'm not repeating those mantras, and I'm just like, what does God need me to see most? And it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. But I almost felt like I was bathing in, like, agony, like in suffering, and it almost made me this fucking adamantium, like this rock hard. It showed me this part of myself that could endure through these deep levels of pain. And afterwards, that kind of over the year, it's been a year now or two since that experience. No, 1 year. And it just opened my eyes up to the gold to be found in the realm of pain. And I've been more willing to explore discomfort and pain after that. Yeah.
How do you look at the physical side of the trip versus the mental and emotional? Is it all, and spiritual, is it all one? Meaning, when you say your stomach was messed up, like, did that feeling go away? Was, like, do you think it's physically doing something to you too? Like,
there's definitely a physical part to it where it's just like this. If you're ever had a hangover before, the stomach pain the night before or the day after.
Yeah, I've had a couple.
Yeah. Excuse me. That's how it felt for me. But the ayahuasca said something very interesting. She's like, excuse me, pain in different areas. The pain that I had at that time was in around my solar plexus, and she said that's associated with repressed emotion. And if you're repressing the emotion, the pain's going to gather there somehow, some way. And when I actually released it, like I did the one night I'm talking about, screaming, went to the second night, the pain wasn't there anymore. Like, it almost seemed like I'd cleared that. If you ever saw the Avatar scene with the chakras, get your, yeah, where he's clearing the water. It's like I cleared the waterway, at least for that night. But for whatever reason, on the last night, I felt like I had to block it. And yeah, it hurt physically. That night, there wasn't very many visualizations. It was just a lot of, like, physical. The medicine showed itself through the form of, like, physical pain, not mental traumas popping up in my head and like, oh, it's scary or sad. Like, no, it's just literally like, oh god, this fucking hurts.
Yeah, it sounded like it. It didn't sound, the physical pain didn't sound enjoyable to me.
No,
so
it wasn't.
That's why I asked that one.
But it could also be like one of the most ecstasy-filled experiences you've ever had. It's a strange thing. Like they say, it shows you what you need to see, not what you want to see, and there seems to be some truth in that. Yeah.
Have you had any urge to do anything similar to that since that experience?
Oh fuck yeah, I'd love to do it again. It was a bit expensive, so I wouldn't want to do it again for a few years, get my funds in order. But yeah, I'd love to do it again. Definitely.
You think, yeah, and hey, listen, neither of us are shamans, neither of us are MDs. I am an MD. I am a major douche. Sure. We figured that one out. But that's the only MD I am. So I asked this knowing, and all the listeners knowing as well, that none of us are qualified to make medical determinations. But do you think that, like, most people can do something? Do you think this is beneficial for the general? You know how people say, yeah, man, if we just put these guys on acid,
yeah, right, the whole world
would be chilled the fuck out, dog.
If you put a gun to my head and I had to bet, I'd bet that's not true. It seems to be like you don't sell ayahuasca to people. That was really the culture in that area. Like, you don't go around trying to convince people to take it. It either calls to you or it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't call to you, it's probably not for you. Like, probably don't do it unless you genuinely want to.
And that's how you should treat most drugs, I feel like, as well. I mean, I've gotten offered DMT multiple times and just didn't take it because I wasn't in the right scenario.
Fair enough.
Yeah, man. It's like you don't want to take it at a party with, like...
Hell no.
Not a chance.
Fuck
you
no.
know? Just not my scenario, you know?
DMT, you want people who are able to restrain you if you're doing DMT, because it can get that bad.
Yeah.
It can get like, I'm just headbutting the ground.
Have you done that too? Or?
Yeah, at the ayahuasca place, they also offered DMT.
Jesus, man. You're like, hey, man, we got a little DMT.
Yeah. That was interesting. I got naked. That was fun.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, they got to allow that there, though.
Yeah, no, they literally said DMT, like, okay, if you take it and you want to get naked, that was one of the things, or they said you want to
because they know you're going to try. They're like, all right, if you want to.
Yeah, during the ayahuasca, the rules were pretty much be quiet, like, keep it to yourself. Obviously, if it's uncontrollable, it's uncontrollable, and we'll deal with it then. But very much keep it to yourself. With the DMT, it's like you're responsible for your actions. Keep that in mind. But if you want to scream, you want to get naked, do your thing. And yeah, and I did.
How responsible you have to be a shaman, man.
Oh my god.
And patient.
Yeah, they were wonderful, dude. They felt like a different type of person. Like,
I mean, the fact that when you're looking in that guy's eyes and he's mirroring it back, I mean, that's a different type of person, 100%. I mean, I believe that. Like, I believe that I also believe that, because if I believe in shamans, then I have to believe that a regular person who's not a shaman can become a shaman. And that I just have to believe for me.
Yeah.
So I have to believe for me that these are just regular people. But I do believe that they have cultivated something that is beyond the span of normal human functioning.
There are definitely
normal interaction.
One thing to say is, well, the guy who is there, who's actually the youngest of the shamans. The two were older women, wonderful people. Anywho, the guy specified, I'm here because I'm following like my path. I'm doing what I genuinely most want to do in life, and that's led me here. That being said, I do wonder to what degree every person could, like, to what degree does every person have a potential to become a shaman? Mm-hmm.
Well, for you, I mean, that must have been somewhat of a thought with the name, you know.
Yeah, because that experience was pivotal in me choosing my name, I think.
But then you also realize the weight of what it's like to be an actual shaman too. So I mean, you chose,
still learning that. Yeah,
I mean, you chose the name selectively, but knowing that it does come, knowing that people are actual shamans, and not to say that you're not, but it's just the fact that that guy's on his path being a shaman, and that's his whole path. You know, it's like, all right, he's living a different life than. But every shaman could be different.
Dude, and it really opened my eyes to like, oh, I think we're missing that in America. Or I wonder if we're missing that.
Yes, back to that concept. Like we don't see, the thing is now is we have trusted sources. Not sources that are trustful, sources that we trust. And though we don't have shamans, we don't have people that we go to for the answers. We have organizations. And we have outlets, and we have conglomerates, right? We have trusted sources. We have the news, many different trusted sources. We have podcasters, many different trusted sources, articles, news in any fashion. Whatever somebody is seeing and believing, like reading and then believing that thing, that's a trusted source. The shaman is a trusted source for life, like a life-bound trusted source. Whereas the news or whatever you're going to individual is a society-bound trusted source, a cultural trusted source. So we don't have these spiritual, life-bound trusted sources. I agree with you. I don't know if we did more or less. If you look at the 60s, I think the drugs were kind of the drugs were the shaman, right? It's like the movement was the shaman. And this is how I look at it. It's just like you don't have a neighborhood shaman. But that's never happened, other than maybe the religion's the closest thing to this, right? A preacher or the priest, that's the closest thing to a shaman.
And I've heard psychologists too.
Yeah, but that's not as... There's hundreds or there's thousands of people in a town, or hundreds that go to church every week. There's not hundreds or thousands that go to the psychologist, right? So, but maybe shaman... Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, right? Maybe the shaman is the psychologist. Maybe it is the person that only a few people go to, only the people that need it right then in that moment.
And there's something so weird about the shaman that when you go talk about okay, I'll go down this tangent for a second. A psychologist being the modern shaman, right? The person you go to as a life coach, and definitely people do that with their priest, right? There seems to be more of a faith in science, a faith in very structured measurement systems, trying to figure out how to improve your life or whatever the given situation is. But when it comes to a shaman, they seem to still be tapped into this. Sadly, the only words that come to mind sound very woo-woo. Like,
yeah, but this is woo-woo.
Yeah. But man, I can't, the words fucking escape me. Like,
there are not words. The words don't exist to really, truly describe it. Right?
It's something emotional, something like... Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Spiritual life, like it's like that. Those aren't it either. But you kind of see what I'm getting.
Right.
yeah, and that's something I've brought up multiple times in the podcast, specifically last episode too. Of like, I'm not really spiritual. Like I meditate all the time and stuff, but like it's not a spiritual thing. It's like full. Like, but maybe this is me just making it that. But it's more of like a mental, just like for my own peace of mind. And maybe that is spiritual. But I think I'm like, well. Is there a deeper dimension of this spirituality that I should go down? And should I go down it? And should I even think that I should or not? And how are people reaching the deeper level? Like I've been on the deeper levels through meditation. I've been on the deeper levels through mushrooms. And what I the example that I use is that, like, say mushrooms, for example, or ayahuasca. Ayahuasca brings you to the back of the house. It blasts you out the back door, right? Mushrooms bring you in. You can walk around a little bit, and then maybe reach the back. Meditation is you're just opening the door. You're looking inside. You kind of see it. You're like, okay. And then you kind of close the door and go about your life. So that's how I look at these things, But I'm like, there seems to be people, though, who live in the house, And to us, they might seem crazy, but it's like they just might be on a different spiritual plane. And the problem is that we can't really define it, right? It's like you'll have a Gabor Mate, right? And fantastic. I love listening to him, right? But I don't see him on a different plane than me. Like, I see him on the same plane. He can describe and understand things fundamentally better, but I think he's functioning on the same dimension as me. And then I think there's people that are really functioning on a different kind of spiritual dimension,
like the artist. And I've been there with the muse before, and it's came out, and the whole song has came out of me, and I didn't even have to edit it. This is a fucking super cool idea. I heard from Jordan Peterson that, okay, imagine there are these three realms of knowledge that we exist in. The outermost realm is the realm of the unknown, right? This is the shit you don't know. The super mystery. And then at the center of that realm is the very known part of reality, right? 1 + 1 = 2. The very mathematical, solidly, accurately measured part of the world. And the intermediary, as he described it, is the artist. The person who can go into the unknown and sort of begin to translate that information into the known, right? And that's the artist who has the muse. Where the fuck does the muse come from? I don't know, but it can produce some amazing shit, right?
Yes. Yeah, and you don't know the feeling until the artist translates it. Like, you've only felt the feeling, but you've never heard it translated into reality, and the artist translates it into reality, and you go, oh, that's that feeling.
Yes.
And sure, it could be obvious of, like, the girl broke up with you and that's what the song's about or whatever, but they are channeling an emotion that you've only felt, not described. And it's being described through the painting or the song or
what the fuck
whatever.
is that? Like, what? There seems to be something cool, admirable, profound when you're able to, like, make a really profound piece of art.
Yeah.
It's something that seems so meaningful about it, and yet it's hard for me to put a very specific, scientifically measured number to that.
Well,
like,
I mean, the thing is that a note isn't a song, right? It's how many notes in a row is a song. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the song, right? But design isn't art. Art is art. If you create art to create art, you're creating art. But if you create art with the purpose of a design, that's the purpose, not the art now. So it's not art, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at these things, where it's like sound isn't music. Sound strung together in a melodic tone, one after the other, it becomes music. So art is stringing together the individual pieces into the formulation, right? And that's when it becomes art. That's when it crosses the line, right? I play beep boop on the piano.
okay, you got a little something, but
I have 2 notes, but I definitely don't have a fucking song. So when I play beep boop 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 beep boop, now it becomes okay. Now that's might be the verse, right, or whatever. Now it becomes a song. So the art has to pass a threshold. And there's people who pick up the piano and they play a little bit, maybe they learn a little bit and they learn some other people's songs, and then that's kind of it. Or maybe they pick up the guitar and they do the same thing. But then there's people who then cross the threshold and take other people's notes that they've learned and put them in a different order. And that's when the art enters the picture.
the creativity.
I think it's the creativity, yeah. And that's one thing that I don't really think has been hijacked. I think meditation has been hijacked. I think spirituality even has been hijacked.
By what?
I mean, meditation, for example, is just like, I said this the other podcast, but like the Headspace app, you know? Like, say, like, they're trying to create apps around shit that's fundamentally very spiritual and like much deeper than an apple would ever be able to get you. And maybe not, right? Maybe not. But I'm saying they're trying to, it's corporatization of concepts that have been around for tens of thousands of years, and you just put a $10 thing on it.
And isn't it weird, like, because I've noticed a similar thing happening with ayahuasca. It's starting to become this popular thing. There are like these ayahuasca retreats, and the vibe I get is almost that they're moving you through like a factory line. And it's hard for me to put my finger on exactly what is off about that, right? It's the concept of, oh, you sold out, man. Like, you lost the spark, man. What the fuck does that mean? Where you're not creating art anymore for to make the most beautiful, connected with God, divine thing. I don't even know if that's right. Like, now you're just making it to make money, and for some reason that can maybe lose the spark. I don't know, man.
Well, that's a whole conversation for sure. I mean, I'll say this. I have made the best beats. I used to be a producer. I say I used to because I don't want to say that I'm a producer. Like, I produce music still, but I have a producer that does it way better than me, and we work together, right?
Dude,
like,
we got a freestyle. I said that last time, but I kind of forgot and didn't feel like doing it by the end, so I apologize for that. But at
we'll
some
throw
point
a beat
today,
on.
That would be fun.
We gotta throw a beat on later. Let's do it, man.
Yes.
100%. But I have a producer. Shit, I don't know what I was saying. What were we talking about?
Oh, sorry. You had a producer. You used to make beats. Creativity, corporations.
You're talking about making your own beats.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the point that I was trying to make about that. But I don't know. I have no idea what point I was trying to make.
We're talking about losing the spark through like corporatization, selling out. You were making your own songs. Beep boop beep. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Found it. Thanks, guys. Thank you for holding this. Thank you, listeners, for holding this. You don't know how hard it is. I made my best beats when I got paid for them.
Yeah?
Yep.
Hey.
Best, dude, you play these beats, any rapper could rap on these beats. Like, if you fit that tone, it's in a category of, and I produced for a long time. Like, I got really fucking good at it. But I got paid and I made my best shit. So it has nothing to do. The money is whatever you ascribe money to be. And it really comes to what you got money for in your life. So what I could never price my beats because I had no fucking idea how you price your art, right? Mm-hmm. Then you go, what's money? Money is bread. Money is gas. Money is like, then I go, okay, so the price doesn't matter then. Because it's just, money's just a way to trade things. Like, you fundamentally, like, people confuse when you start mixing art and money. There's diehard hobbyists who have never got paid for their work, who are trying to tell you that that's bad. It's bad because if you got paid, now you have to make the best shit you've ever made in your life, right? You don't know what that pressure's like until there's a person going, I sent you the fucking invoice, where is it?
You got time limit, bitch, yeah.
You got a time limit. Now, you might rush. It might not be your best work. That's totally possible. But there is a pressure involved that, for me, it's a pressure that I truly needed. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to that topic, you should get paid because it'll give you a new perspective. Zoom out more. Stop getting caught up in the money shit. You should get paid either. You can get paid $10,000 or you can pay $5. It's gonna change something.
And I don't want to knock someone who makes art primarily for money. I don't want to say that as if it's necessarily a bad thing, because, like, hey, make your fucking bills, right? Yeah. Like, do your thing. But when I think of, okay, Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? That seemed like a show, ignoring Korra for a second, that started and finished, and it was gold from start to finish. And then I look at a show like One Piece, right? I have a tattoo of Luffy, one of the main characters. Like, I love that. This is one of my favorite stories of all time. But it seems like they've dragged it on. And my sense of it, this could obviously be very wrong, but my sense of it is that they are now just doing it for money. And whatever spark they had before, it is now kind of gone. And it's just like, we're just going to keep running it. Like, I've noticed the same with Naruto or Bleach, where it's like, we just kind of want to make money, like, see how much money we can possibly get from this thing, and, like, do your thing. I don't want to say it's necessarily bad, but it lost some piece of the gold.
See, and you're looking at this from a massive company who creates TV shows. Like, yeah, bro, like, they make a lot of money. Like, their whole thing's money. Like, I don't give a shit what show they made. I don't care if it's Breaking Bad or one of the best shows on television. If they weren't making money, they weren't making it.
Fuck yeah.
So if that Naruto would have never existed if they were going to only go in debt for the rest of their lives, they could, right? Money was mandatory for all this shit. The people who are on set, they're fucking designing that animation. Even 20 years ago made money, right? The show had to make money to pay them. So what happens is it's not the money, it's the mindset. The mindset changes from we need to make this thing and we'll make money to we need to make this thing and make more money and continue to make more money and make as much out of it as we can.
So maybe intention plays a role in the quality of the art?
It's 100% intention, dude. I know people who sell what I sell for $5,000, what I sell for $500, right? That's intention. You can get the same outcome. My intention is lifetime value. My intention isn't to grab $5,000 from somebody and then they hate me because we had a contract, and in the contract it said I would do the things that I did, and then I delivered them, so you can't be mad, right? That's how some people do it. That's not how I do it. I do something for lifetime value, but it's mindset, right? Because I know the 500, I'd rather over deliver on 500 than just give you the just enough for 5,000, right? So that's a mindset, dude. That's a values. That's a values thing. It's like a lot of these things come down to values. Like, I've had to explain this a lot of times because I truly believe it. Is that I think it was a friend of mine on the podcast who, somebody had a gig, right? And they couldn't do the gig, but they didn't want to tell him about it because they just didn't want him doing it, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, say that again?
So say like you're a production assistant on a movie set, right? And you can't be there, right? We need you for 2 weeks, you can't be there, right? I'm also a production assistant, but you don't tell me just because you don't want me to get it, right? So you see what I'm saying? Like, you're not saying, yo, Sully, you want this job? I can't do it. Do you want it? Why don't you take it? You're not doing that for the reason that you don't want me to get it and potentially get an opportunity that you would have gotten, right? Now, my values aren't that. My values are end product, right? My values are looking at this movie going, this is for the people who are watching the movie, right? So I'd rather you take the job, right, than I don't care if I don't get the job. The outcome is, does the role get filled? So then the actual outcome that we want to happen, which is the movie being created, happens. So some people live in that world, bro. Some people don't want other people to potentially get an opportunity that they probably would not have even gotten. And I don't live in that world. That's the 5,000 guy for the guy for what I sell for 500, right? He wants that opportunity because he values the money, right? The guy in the example of the production assistant, he values himself. He values his own person over the collective goal, which is to get this movie made, right?
And there's a very fascinating thing to stack on top of that. When you think of the guy who is, how should I say? Okay, so I heard this description, movie Baby Boy. If you haven't watched it. I've never heard of it so recently. It's a fucking wonderful movie. Anywho, at one point, someone's describing what a good salesman is. And a good salesman is the kind of guy who, after they've sold you the product, you feel good. Like, yeah, like, this was a fucking wonderful deal. I'm glad they persuaded me to buy this thing. But the bad salesman, it's the guy who sells you the thing, and afterwards you're like, ooh, fuck, I wish I didn't fucking do that.
Yeah, for real. I don't even know if I wanted that.
Yeah, literally, but then they're kind of running away like, oh, I got him. And the interesting thing about that is, from things I've heard, take that for what it's worth, the person who, let's say, screws you over to get the 5,000 now tends to, their reputation is shot, right? Like, they have to find new people, because I can't rely on the person who I just kind of skimmed $5,000 from to give me a good word for the next person. So my societal network is less likely to grow because people are like, don't fucking do business with that guy. He's going to screw you over. So you may get a lot of money in the short term, but over long term, at least from what I've heard, it doesn't pan out as well.
No, man. I think I try to think as long term as possible with everything, because if you are not doing things today and this week and this month and this year that benefit you 10 years from now, your 10 years from now is going to be really terrible. It's going to suck, because the people that I know who are 10 years ahead of me were prioritizing shit. The people that I want to live like, they were prioritizing shit 10 years ago. to bring them to the point now. Your life isn't you now. Your life is what you did in the past that brought you up to where you are now. The most important thing is what brought you there. You don't get anything immediately, right? So that's what I optimize for. Like, it's not everything, dude. Like, I have habits that are quote unquote bad habits. I fucking still do them. I just live my life. Like, I have things that I want to change about myself in the future. I'm not perfect. Like, I haven't fixed it all, for sure. But many of the things that I spend the most time on, I'll say, are all for later. They do okay now, and they, pay the bills, and they fulfill me and all that. But it's a long game, dude. And if I play this long game, I don't want to wish I played the long game. That's a shit position. Now, because that is the guy who's 43 and watches Gary Vee. And I've talked to these guys on the phone. Like, they're good guys, right? It's the guy who spends $3,000 to go meet Gary Vee at a fucking seminar and still works at fucking Fidelity Bank. I don't want to be that. And that's just one example. But I want to do it now, so then I'm set up to where I don't have to have a realization in 30 years. I'd rather just try to figure it out now and then just do things that optimize for that. It's fucking way harder in the moment. Like, it's way harder when you're grinding to make something later. But one podcast a week for 10 years.
There you go. Oh, as you're fucking saying that, okay, here's an interesting thought that pops up. So, the story of the ant and the cricket, right? The ant spends all summer storing away goods for the winter. The cricket spends all summer just kind of fiddling away, playing music, just kind of living for the present sort of lifestyle. And the question is, well, who wins in the end? And the answer, this was a conversation between Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, their latest podcast together. And the answer is to who wins. Well, it depends what happens. If a bunch of other ants move in and steal that one ant's supplies, so like you saved up and someone just took all your goods, well, then in a sense it's the cricket who won, because they were kind of just living for the moment. And what this connects to seems to be the stability of a society. If your society is stable enough that you can trust that if I invest thousands of dollars in the bank or in investments, that it's actually going to be there by the time I hit retirement age, let's say, and that I'm not going to get, for example, skimped out of my money by corrupt bankers like the 2008 crisis, who I wake up one morning and all my savings are gone. So it's like the saving up mentality seems to depend a lot on the world you're living in. Is it a world where you can trust it's still going to be there in the future and it's not going to be robbed or taken away or blown away by a disaster? And that's an interesting thing to contend with when I'm trying to figure out how to live my life.
Well, the thing that does not change is your skills. If you have made money investing, you'll always know how to make money investing. Meaning, if you can make money investing 5 times, then you can do it 10. It's just you're gonna have to stick with it, right? Oh. And so the problem is, people they'll want a shortcut, but they don't want to build the skill. So they'll trust somebody else to do it. And then when that doesn't work out, then that person will be like, well, it's just the circumstances.
And I heard if it does work out, you just win by luck, essentially, if it works out. And then you have this insecurity of like, well, if it's just by luck could take it away. My skills didn't make it here, so it's not solid.
Nobody who fucking made it says it's... I mean, not nobody who made it says it's luck, but like, if you really were to push, they will say it's luck, for sure. Many people will say a major reason is luck. And the problem with luck is that you can't account for it. You can't quantify it. So you can hope for it. Yeah. And that's it.
But it could swing either way.
The one thing you can guarantee is your skills. So if you are in a job now that makes $100,000 a year, right, in an industry that's projected to grow, you have 6-figure a year skills. If that industry explodes, like, you have 6-figure skills. You know how to cultivate a skill to make that much money again. Yeah. So it's you have to overvalue your skills and undervalue luck.
Here's okay. I'm curious what you think about this. Okay, so you're in Cambodia. Like this during the 70s, something along those lines.
I'm always in Cambodia. Yeah.
And I don't know if you're wearing glasses, if you have a college degree, if you're very light skinned, if you're a person who knows how to read, you're killed. Like, these skills that in a stable society are the things that get you the best around. If things go sideways, they're the things that put a target on your back. And that's a strange part about becoming educated, learning these sorts of skills, having money being invested, that it seems to, you have to make sure it, how the fuck to say this, making sure the society around you is stable seems to be a very important part of relying on your skills and building your skills and building your investments and things along those lines. Because if, for example, America is to go the way that the Soviet Union did, and which was also a superpower of the world around like the 80s, 90s, where it collapsed. Like, everyone thought it was one of these top of the world countries, and overnight, essentially, the economy crashed, and a lot of people were their skills didn't mean much, didn't mean jack shit, because everything around them collapsed. So it's like, I can't build fast enough. Things are just breaking down around me so fast. Oh, okay, so I'll direct this to you for a second. And if you don't want to go down this route, it's fine. It's your podcast. Do you see any concern about the state of America over the past few years?
Can't control it. Nope. Can't control it. That I can't control. Like, all I can do is all I have is what I have. Like, if podcasting dies tomorrow, I'll fucking pivot, dude. Like, I learned this shit. I know how to learn shit, right? Like, I don't look at, like, all right, if the country's gonna implode and then they're gonna come after the podcast. It's like, first of all, they're not coming after me. You know, I'm not the guy. I don't own the house. Like, sure, we're on a hill, but it's like, I'm not the richest dude in town with the house perched up on the hill where you know that's the richest guy, has all the money, and then when everything goes crazy, they go and loot that guy. Like, that's not me, so I know that's not gonna happen. Not that I won't be threatened, but I mean, for me to fucking think that if turmoil occurs, for me to account for it, there's enough shit that'll probably happen that I have to account for. It's like, there's no way that I'm accounting for shit that on paper probably won't happen. Like, it's and sure, you can argue it. You could probably argue it, but you're not going to be able to give me a percentage. And the stock market crashing, that I can go, that could happen. Like, we're kind of close. Like, a full recession, kind of close. There's warning signs. They've been saying this for fucking 10 years, dude. It's like, there's things that do happen. They don't happen that quickly.
So you keep your eye on, like, the omens. You keep your eye on these giant catastrophes that could happen while I'm working on my local grind, building my own nest egg.
I don't think about the catastrophes that could happen really at all. I just don't have time to. Like, I have to think about what's going. I think about if everything goes, the externalities of the world. I can't concern myself with that. Like, I need to build the things now. I'm building things that, as long as the world goes in the direction that it's the world, and as long as this country goes in the direction that everybody's predicting it to go, which is real estate investors in Florida. If you think that if you think that the tide, if you think that the ocean is going to rise 10 inches, ask Miami real estate investors. Ask them. They're not investing in 50 to 200 year deals in real estate if the water's going to rise, right? Like, there's people way smarter than me that will predict this beforehand, and I'll hear it from them, right? It's like, so for me to get caught up in it, and that's just one example with the water levels, but it's like, there's people who actively have jobs that are there to make sure that they know if this stuff happens, and I'm not in that industry. My industry is, is the internet on? If the internet dies, I'm fucked. I'll go back to my other skills, because if the internet dies, people still drive cars. Boom, I can go fix cars. I'm good. My skills fucking saved me, dude. You know, I mean, I just don't look at, well, this could be a civil war, or this could be a this. It's like, it's not. It's just not now. For me to hypothesize is, I could sit here all day, you know, but my client needs me to call him.
Yeah, man. Fair enough.
And you kind of alluded to that, though. Like, do you see it going in a direction like that? And do you see that being feasible or on the horizon? Because I would think you're crazy if you said yes, but I would love to hear, because I'm in my own fucking world, bro. You know,
I've seen some very troubling warning signs about, let's just say, politics in America. And when I say politics, there seems to be a lot of, ideas associated with what that is. A lot of it seems to be just lying politicians, arguments on television, clickbait stories. But if you view politics as just, okay, this is the system that decides who gets what they want, right? It's as simple as that. Do you get what you want in this country? That's essentially politics. Do you have your hand on the lever that can get you what you want, whether that's weed being legalized, whether that's the speed being raised or lowered, whether that's the draft being reinstated? I'm talking about all different types of examples that politics influences, right? And so you're talking about who's getting what they want. Okay. And then I've looked at the state of the country over the past few years, and I'm by no means an expert in this, so again, take that for what it's worth. But from what I've heard is that, okay, political tensions are rising. A common thing I hear is that there's a level of hatred between parties that was last recorded this high right after the Civil War of our last Civil War.
Yeah, but who's recording that?
Right? Like, and then how much can you trust the polls that are taking those questions?
If you're telling me right now it's more polarized than it was when Trump became president, it's not possible.
But that's the weird thing. Okay, so I look at like a January 6th, and I don't know how you think about that, but when I saw it, I was like, oh, there are people that are very willing to violently overtake the country. And it was a small,
like 65 of them. It's like they're radical. Like they are the fringe, meaning they are the smallest percentage.
But the fact that they got that far is something that worries me. The fact that they literally got into Congress. They didn't even have a
fence. That kind of makes sense.
But
what do they have? One fence? The cops let them in, dude. It's like, right?
And that's, well, I don't know if they let it. They didn't seem to be enough to actually stop them.
If they got that far, that's not a people issue. That's a security issue, right? A security person's going to tell you that.
Are you like alluding to it's the notion of going and doing that action in the first place?
Yes, the fact that it got that far, that fact that from the little I've seen, it seems like the president was very much promoting that, and that's what I've heard is one of the most
but it's still
wonderful
didn't work though. That's the thing.
But here's one of the weird things. It's one of the most first wonderful parts of our system I've heard, that we're able to peacefully transfer power, right, from president to president. That's been one of the staples of America. Apparently that's a rare thing throughout history. Like, people don't usually peacefully give up the most powerful reigns.
That's true.
And we're the biggest superpower in the world, so this is like the biggest reigns in history.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've been doing that peacefully is good. But then you look at the Trump-Biden election, and the fact that one of the leaders is saying the election's not valid. Like, no, this is cheating. This is lying. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to get into that at the moment. But the fact that that's being said at all, and the fact that a lot of people are believing that at all, it just makes me wonder whether this is one of a warning sign of something worse to come.
But that's been said before, though. Like, there's been presidential candidates who have in the last 30 years said that there was fraud. The difference I want to make is not just saying that there's fraud, but saying that the entire election is invalid. Yeah, no, true. I mean, dude, I mean, and there's nobody like Trump.
And that's, I'm so fascinated by Trump, and just, I need to talk to more people who support him, because I'm so curious.
If you look at us, you're like, these guys are fucking right wing, dude. It's like, I'm not. I don't know if you are, but I'm not. Mm-hmm. I'm issue by issue, mm-hmm. For sure. And I'm not libertarian. I'm not in the middle. I'm not on the left. I'm not on the right. I'm nothing, dude. Mm-hmm. I'm fucking politically nothing. I'm just topic. But there's not been a president like him. And he proves that by the things that he says. Yeah. He says absolutes. It's fucking madness, dude. And presidents do that, right? But like, not like him. Not like the election is a fraud.
Yes, January 6th, it's going down.
It's going down.
Like, I'm not explicitly saying overrun the Capitol, but there's a strong...
Dude, he was a fucking comedian, man.
And just,
he's always got a bit.
And the fact that, like, comparing Trump and Biden to the presidents that followed, these don't seem like very high competency people.
I don't think that the president has much power. Anything they say they're going to do, they never do. And barely. There's no president where you go, wow, he fucking did like everything they said.
Oh, okay. Here's something I want to jump on real quick. And this is an extreme example, but an important one, I think. So as Germany was going through its woes after World War I, right? You got to imagine, like, the people who are ruling the country are getting knocked out and replaced left and right. It was fucking madness for quite a while as far as who's running the country right now. And Hitler was on the I'm not calling Trump, I'm not calling Biden Hitler. That's not what I'm saying. But just follow for a second. As Hitler was on the rise, he failed a lot. There were a lot of points where it's like, I came close to becoming the president, but the old president who had been the president for a long time, he ended up running again, and the majority of the country supported him, kind of like Biden in a weird way.
Or like the Putin of Germany basically was still running shit.
Yes. And for a long time, that's how shit worked. And Hitler kept trying to get elected, kept failing, kept trying, kept failing. And it was like, a part of me sees January 6th as the equivalent to Hitler almost winning the election, because there was one point where he was off by several million votes. He had like 5 million, and the president had 20 million. The specifics I'm gonna fuck up, but it was a little burst. Like, okay, he's not strong enough to win yet, but you can see there's this strong force in the country that wants him to rule. And through all these twists and turns of history and events, eventually that little guy ended up becoming the person who ran the whole thing. And even though it looked like an insignificant thing, all the times he almost gained power, you could be like, he didn't win, the other guy won by like 20 million votes, don't worry about it. It was a warning sign. And I'm not saying it has to go down that route, it could go down a million different routes, but the fact that I saw that in January 6th, that there's a leader saying legitimately, I'm still the president, like, this is not legitimate, fight for me, that was something that worried me.
What did he actually say? Like, what did Trump actually say that day? Like, what's the quote though? Like,
that's a good question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Trey, can you mind looking that up?
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I want to know what he actually said.
That is very important.
Yeah, I think that's important because I don't know at all what he said.
And I could go,
I'll just believe you, or I'll just believe anybody.
Yeah, don't do that. Definitely do your research.
I don't believe me. You know? But I mean, listen. I guess I kind of get what you're saying, but I mean, he was already done. Like, he was already out. He already got voted. You know, he got voted out.
He could run again. I think he actually said
he might run again, but
and not even Trump specific. Like, it's weird how calm everything seems right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you, and you may be in your right-wing wormhole, but if you don't, or your silo, but if you don't think that the country calmed down, like I do, and as if we have the fucking pulse. You've done 40 interviews. I've done like 100. Like, we don't have the fucking whole pulse, son.
Fair.
But it seems more...
calm.
It seems more calm, and it seems less defensive.
Agreed.
And I really palpably feel that. And I'm totally down to admit that that's just me, and I'm not saying anything that anybody else feels here, but I think the person matters a lot, right? So Biden doesn't say anything. He says shit that just doesn't make sense. He doesn't say things to get people fired up.
Did you see part of his speech where he looked like fucking stormtrooper speech? He had the red lights behind him.
No, I didn't see this. It's pretty good, though.
This was, I only saw a clip of it. He was saying things along the lines of like, we need to unify this, that, and the other. But then like a minute afterwards, he's also calling the Trumpers, something along those lines, like the enemy of the state. And like, we need to unify, but this entire section of the population is an enemy of the state. So it almost seemed like Trump, after Trump came into office, the window of hostility, it almost seemed like a lot of hostility became more normalized. And the amount of aggression I saw in family members, like on the ground level, just talking about politics, seemed to spike more than I ever saw before. Yeah. And it has calmed down during the Biden administration. But I wonder if when Trump runs again, it's going to jump to even new heights of aggression.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, listen, I'm not going to vote for him, but I didn't vote for either of them. And I think fundamentally it's obviously not a good system. Like, it's just, I don't think maybe people would not agree with, I would think a lot of people, maybe more constitutional oriented people might agree that the system's fine, but I don't have a way to change it or fix it. But to have two options to run 300, however many hundreds of millions of people that we have, or billions of people that we have here.
Millions. We have like
350 million or something. Like, that shouldn't be a job.
It's strange.
It shouldn't be a job. Like, it's a dumb job. It's a job to run 1 million people, not 300 million. You know, that's why mayors fucking make sense to me.
Would you ever get involved in local politics? Not running, than just voting or caring more about it.
I've thought about getting involved in running. I've thought about getting involved actively.
I wonder if that would be one of the keys to helping us in general, more people getting involved in local politics at the moment, because there are a lot of arguments to be made that your vote doesn't matter very much for the large scale election. And there's something called the invisible primary. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Do you care if I dive into it real quick?
No, go. You're educating me.
Okay, cool. An invisible primary being, okay, so after an election is run, the heads of either the GOP, which is the Republicans, or the DNC, head of the Democrats, they'll gather with the biggest funders of their groups and the head of this political party, right? And it's a reasonable thing. It's not like some evil smoke and mirrors thing. They get together and like, all right, what's the strategy for next year? How can we improve our election campaigns? How can we be more likely to get elected? This, that, and the other. And they will decide on party members to support. This was actually a big thing with Hillary when she was running against Bernie. This was a big stink because
running against Bernie.
Yeah, right? Because you're not supposed to have favoritism if you're the leader of the DNC against any other party member. But emails were exposed where the leaders of the DNC were saying, like, no, we're going to promote Hillary. So the biggest funders, the leaders of this group, they come together. They talk about who's someone who's most likely to win the next election, right? Yep. And they'll kind of pick that person, and they'll give them a lot of funding, which in turn gives them more news coverage, which in turn makes them more popular, right? And now the news is covering them more. They're getting a whole lot of funding from these big groups. So before the everyday person gets to choose who gets elected, there are these people who are pre-selected who have a much higher probability of even showing up on your radar than anybody else. And so that's an argument to be made that there's an election made before we ever put our votes in the ballot.
There is 100%. I mean, there's an election made that is either person one or person two, but that's parties. Like, those parties get the most. And the funding is you can only donate $5,000 or something like that. There's
unless you have a super PAC, and then
there's loopholes in the whole thing. Yeah, it's almost unlimited. Yeah, it's because though, if you zoom out more, it's like, yeah, this is what these people do because there's these two major parties, and then there's these two major parties because these have been the two major parties, and no other party can compete with them because they don't have the backing of the funding of the people who support these two, and those people who support those two major parties aren't going to fund the third party or the fourth or the fifth or whatever you want. So it seems like it is a system. What I'm meaning is all the parts are come together to make either one option A happen or option B. Like, that's just what it seems like.
And it's so strange that when I voted for Biden, I didn't research him very much, and I kind of regret that in hindsight, but I almost voted for him because he wasn't Trump. Yeah.
Not Trump.
And I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem like a good long-term solution.
Yeah, they're not this person.
Especially, I'm sure a lot of Trump voters were just like, he's not Biden.
Yeah.
So I'm going, literally.
I bet some people voted for Hitler because of that, dude.
Yeah, fucking
They're not this guy who's been in here for 20 years or whatever. Let's get this new guy in.
Which is such a weird perspective.
He wasn't campaigning on what he did. Like, he was campaigning. He was playing politics. Like,
yeah.
Hardcore. They didn't know what he was going to do, even though he alluded to it before, but he wasn't public facing about it. But yeah, I mean, that's a bad situation for sure as well. That's what I'm saying, dude. I don't have a fucking solution. I don't know how politics works enough to know, like, hey, well, we can do it like Australia does it, and they have 13 parties or whatever. I don't fucking know, dude. I don't know what the answer is. But it does seem, that's why it feels, I'm not incentivized to participate in it. Like, mostly laws don't, like, they affect me. Everything affects me. But the things that they're campaigning on mostly aren't things that I'm like, wow, I really wish that this was changed.
And that's one of the weirdest parts, that as I've talked to people about politics, apathy seems to be the number one emotion in relationship to politics. Like, I just don't care.
Well, it's also all old shit. All these people are old. All these ideas are old. Everybody's fucking old. Get some new people in there who look like me and sound like me. It might be my age, and fucking seem like they care about me, and then maybe I'll care. It's like, I'm not going to care about people who obviously don't care about me or anything about me. Why do I now care about them? I don't give a fuck. If your shit doesn't, if Biden versus Trump, my fucking business is the same, my fucking life is the same, my side job's the same, my fucking girlfriend's the same, fucking her job's kind of affected. She works for the government, right? She would want to look into this. But me, I'm like, fuck, like if the taxes change, maybe some shit could change, but not in my bracket. Shit really ain't changing down here, you know?
Oh, that really...
So it's like the fact that's the real fucking reason why people don't participate is that they don't feel like anybody cares, and that might be an emotional way to look at it or something like that, whereas like politics should just be logic or something. But that's not the case because a lot of...
We're humans, right?
Yeah, everybody makes an emotional argument. But that's my thing, dude. Like, if they were like, we're gonna ban podcasts, and then I had to vote for somebody who doesn't ban them, fuck, bro, I'd be the first one to vote.
Which is so weird, man, because that person could also have a bunch of other things they're running on you just don't know or don't care about.
Well,
which
I factor that into. We're gonna ban podcasts, but we're
gonna legalize weed and all that other stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna, ban, or we're gonna not ban podcasts, but we're gonna ban weed, and I'll be like, fuck, that's tough for me.
Yeah.
I love both those things.
It's a strange world.
Or we're gonna promote guns. We want guns, but we're not gonna allow Muslims into our country.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what do I want to do here?
It's like,
motherfucker. They're pretty good people. You know?
And then it does get really personal, man. Like, what affects me in my life? Well, I really like guns for XYZ reason, protection, hunting, etc. But I don't really have any Muslim people in my close-knit community, and that's huge because it's almost not real to you if you don't experience it daily. So it's like, it's that kind of background thing. Like, it doesn't sound that great. Yep. And if it were Christian people, I'd probably be more offended if you happen to be Christian. But if it doesn't affect you directly, oftentimes it seems like people just don't really care.
Yeah. Well, because the side of the spectrum that cares the most meaning like there's people that care on behalf of other people, and that's the fringe over there. I don't care. I won't make statements or make determinations based on other people, like based on their parties or their groups or their ethnicity or their nationality or anything like that. Like that's the thing where that's the balance that you try to strike, where it's like, okay, do I care about things that affect other people? But like, okay, so does then that mean that people care about things that affect me? Well, that I don't know. So I have to worry about me. Because I don't know who's caring about me. I just got me, dude. Like, I could try to figure this shit out, figure my own shit out. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough, man. That's the problem, the fundamental, where I'm at, and where, there's people have mentioned this to me before, but, a friend of mine was like, you should talk about more relevant topics, And, like, I did a solo episode of the podcast, and I'm like, it's so boring to me.
You're right. That's a big thing, man.
Like, I just don't care. Like, like he gets super fired up about whatever the newest development of Ukraine or it's like, no, dude. Like, it's just not me. So it sucks. I suck because I don't care about it, and none of it excites me. And I only care about shit that excites me.
There's something to keep quoting him because I just really like a lot of his stuff. One of the things Jordan Peterson has said is that once you know what bothers you, right? Like, what are the problems that actually bother you? Do you care about? And he's like, okay, now you know, like, what your goal, your mission, what there is for you to focus on. That's what's important to you in the world. That's a rough way of saying it, and for me, it bothers me the things I'm seeing in politics right now. So I can see like a fair argument for like, all right, you don't really care at the moment, it doesn't bother you.
It doesn't bother me, dude.
Fair enough at the moment.
When it bothers me, fucking let me know, bro. Yeah. All right?
That's one of the things I worry about, man.
They're trying to fuck podcasting up, bro. Be on this shit. If you find some shit, I care. Fucking send it to me. I'll be the first one.
I'll keep that. Yeah, what do people care about? Yeah, that's a big thing, man.
Yeah. Well, you used to get on it. You used to watch the TV, and it used to be, here's the fucking shit they're gonna tell you, and you just believed it. And you were a worker. You were a blue collar looking guy, worker, and you lived in this state, and this is your party, and this is my party, and these are my people, and this is my shit. Mm-hmm. And now it's not really like it's still like that for some people, but then other people it's like there isn't a party that all podcast producers fucking go towards where I watch the TV and I go, that's my guy. Mm-hmm. No, like I said, there is no that's my guy. There was people that gave a fuck, and there's still people that give a fuck today about politics that go, because I go, that's my girl, that's my guy. I don't have that. I never have. Mm-hmm. And, dude, what president I like the most? I loved Obama. I loved his speech, his oration, right? I just look at people for their like characteristics.
That's another weird part about the election.
I just look at skills and characteristics. It's like, dude, I literally like that guy. And
do I want to have a beer with that guy?
Obamacare. Only thing I know he ever did. That's how naive I am. Because I didn't look at any politics. I only looked at what I saw. And it's like, all right, cool. I liked him. Trump, he's a comedian and he's just doing it for a laugh and to get excitement. Okay, cool. So I figured him out. Biden, he's a puppet. Okay, cool. Figured him out. Like, I just figure him out. Then I go, all right, no policies about podcasting, weed legalization, fucking music, art, live events, DJing, weddings. If there's fucking nothing about, my girlfriend. All right, cool. Nothing about this shit that I just do every day and care about.
Yeah,
I'm good, dude. I don't need to worry about it.
Fair enough. And maybe that's a good maybe that's a good sign that things aren't as bad as maybe I fear, because it's not popping up on just people's radar, in generally speaking. And then there's another part that worries. Is it one of those? It's becoming so normalized that things are getting extreme if you were to look at it from a long-term perspective, but since it's happening so gradually, it's like the toad getting boiled to death, right? Like you slowly turn up the heat. And so anyway, that's just something I really have to keep my eye on, but I'll keep you updated if I see something that might catch your fancy.
Definitely. I mean, I'm down. I'm not going to see it. I watch the local news. I think that's the best news, even though they're all fucking clones of their other local news. You ever see that video where it's all
yeah, I think one of the major corporations fought.
Fucked.
Yo,
Tret, did you ever find what Trump said?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's fucking see.
So there's a quote that says this is what he said, quote unquote, and then there's another quote that says this is what his defense lawyers say that he say, quote unquote. So I'll read the first quote that says this is what he actually said. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore, end quote. His defense lawyers say that he said, not that, but he said, I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard.
Marching.
And if he said, see that
big difference in those words there.
Yes.
That's all I gotta say. Big difference.
No.
That's the worst thing. I need to get better at remembering specific
and we don't
facts.
have tone. We don't have tone too. But listen, okay. Do you think he made that happen? Purposely. Is that what he wanted? And then it happened and he made it happen? Or was it also people on their own accord who weren't influenced by him, but not by his direct instruction, and they just did it on their own accord, and it was a mob mentality? Because it seems like it has to be a mix.
I agree. And there are some vague memories I have, and I need to get better at remembering specifics, but so look it up if you're curious. But there are vague memories I have of him saying, like, if we lose the election, I think he said this when he was running against Hillary, either way, he's like, I'm not going to accept it. I won't say that that's like a valid election.
I believe that he said that too.
And so I think he played a very big role. I don't want to say I think, right? Because I don't know. It seems to me like he played a big role.
And we can't get in the minds of all these people, and we weren't there even too. So there's that.
But it seems like he played a big role in that. It seems like he really wanted a lot of his supporters to not count this as a valid election. And maybe it's some sort of longer game plan. Like, I'm sort of making it normal. Like, oh yeah, we stormed the Capitol. That's a little bit more normalized now. So in the future, if I want to push for something a little more extreme, maybe that, compared to January 6th, now that we're getting more normalized to it, it won't seem so extreme and people will be more willing to overlook it.
It's like school shooters or something. It's like, oh, another one. Like,
and that's so fucking weird. Can I? Is there a bathroom up here?
Anything can be normalized.
I gotta pee.
There's not. Oh, you have the great outdoors, sir.
Fuck yeah, perfect. Do you care if I run out real quick?
Oh no, you're good, dude. You're good. Me and Tret will hang out.
Cool.
We're hanging out.
Tret, are you in a political fucking party or anything? Or
no.
You're a free baller.
Yeah, I'm a free baller.
You're not as much a free baller as me.
No, not even close.
You're like, motherfucker, I'm pretty close to his side.
Yeah, I definitely go more Democratic than anything.
Are you familiar with Hodge twins?
No.
They're twins, and they're on YouTube.
Hey, I'll take a little bit of that guy over there if you want to.
I got you.
Meet me halfway here.
Yeah, I got you.
Keep going. Hodge twins.
So they they're YouTubers, right? And they quit their job as accountants, and they became YouTubers. And there was a point, and if I were to guess, I would guess that Alex probably is familiar with them.
Okay.
They are right-wing guys. And I was watching a podcast with them and this guy named Patrick Bet-David, who's a really successful entrepreneur who owns an insurance company. And they were describing their party, their right-wing party, and then the left-wing party. It was very interesting to me to hear him try to describe. I would like to have a left-wing person there that could actually be like, well, no, that's actually not, what we are or whatever like that. But
yeah, but see, here's the thing. Like, for me, I don't identify with a party. Like, I personally don't believe in that just as a person. Like, I think there's too many different subjects, too many different things to be like, no, I'm a Democrat, you know what I mean? Or I'm a Republican.
Yep.
That just doesn't vibe with me. I kind of, in a way, agree with what you're saying, somewhat, to some degree, of like, it's kind of topic by topic.
Yeah.
But most of the time on those topics, I align my values more with a Democratic view than a Republican view.
I think I do too, but I don't know because I don't know what both sides agree with completely. Like, I don't even know the sides. See, that's where I'm. It's
kind of hard to say. I mean, like, you kind of have to pick a topic. Like, if you pick a topic and you say, okay, well, what's one side and what's the other side? But is there
like, all right, left-wing people believe this, right-wing people believe this? Like, there is totally those, and those I don't know. So I don't know if I mostly know, but like, all right, guns, like, I want.
Well, so you can get like super general and start with saying, okay, if you were going to go from like a 30,000 foot view, what do Democrats in 2022, what are their viewpoints? Probably to have stricter gun laws is one thing, right? Yep. Probably to have a more universal healthcare system is another thing. So more, how do I describe it? More people-centric. It's more of a people-centric society together kind of thing. One hand kind of helps the other hand type of thing, where the Republican Party is more of a individualistic party. So it's more of, I will work and do my own thing to get to this point on my own. I don't need anybody's help to get there.
Mm-hmm. And the right believes that they're more constitutional based, like standard amendments,
like conservative, stick with what works sort of thing.
Yeah, it's conservation of, I mean, you can get super drastic on that side and be what is it? It's the not founding father party. You'd probably know the name, the super radical right wing.
Alt-right?
No, it's like even past that. It's like they're like constitutionalists to the
like never change it. Period.
Yeah, it is the Constitution.
Neo-Nazi.
Yeah, right. But so it's like conservation of the what was originally there, and that things really shouldn't change. Where the Democratic side is more of changing and developing with times changing.
Yeah,
it's like really on a 30,000
both of those
view.
make sense to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
like, that's
to a certain degree.
But yeah, like you're saying, like I probably do lean more left, I would say. Probably.
You definitely do.
Yeah, and because you
definitely
fucking heard me talk.
You definitely do.
20,000 fucking hours.
You definitely do.
I feel like I sound like an idiot. Like I really don't really know. Like I don't really know. I just don't follow. Like I don't know this stuff. I don't know what these people. Like I see fringes. And I see that, and they bring up a video on a podcast about some fringe thing, and I'm like, oh wow, that's crazy. I don't know the fundamentals. Like I fucking forget, dude. Like if I learned, I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like literally, if you want to go like super basic, it's a party that doesn't want change and a party that wants things to change. So, and that's like totally policy like driven. Like it's not like things should never change ever and they have to stay exactly. That's not what like the Republican Party is about. They're just saying that there are these core policies that should stay the same way that they are currently or were before. So like a lot of times they'll fight to overturn, like Roe v. Wade is one of those things. Yep. They want it to go back, and be like, no, it was fine the way that it was before, and keep it that way. Where it's like on the other side, it's more, well, we have to adapt and change. Change versus not change.
No, that makes sense. Dude, we were talking. Are you familiar with Hodge twins? The Hodge twins? You would probably like these guys. They're pretty good, man. They're YouTubers. They're twins. They were accountants. They quit their accounting job. Like one of them had a kid, and they just started a YouTube channel, and they started getting traction. And like maybe 5 or 6 years into making videos, this is their full-time job. and they look exactly this, like they dress the same, they have the same haircut, everything. They started coming out that they were right wing, and they lost the first video they made. They had "Make America Great Again" hats on, and they lost. They went from like 475,000 followers to like 390 or something like that. Like they lost 100,000 subscribers on that video, and then their following like got insane after that, you know. But it was just interesting to me. I was watching a podcast with them the other day with Patrick Bet-David. I'm not sure if you watch him. Yeah, you got to check him out, man. PBD, he's great. He's a very successful entrepreneur, owns a big insurance company, and he was interviewing these guys, and they start talking about, they're like, well, the right is like this, and well, the left is like this, and they start talking about it. I'm like, this is like the fucking only info I'm getting, dude. Like, I see the TV, but I see MSNBC, and then I see Fox, and it's like I just try to infer stuff, but I'm only seeing, it's like I watch the first quarter of 4 Giants games the whole season, and I'm trying to tell you about the Giants, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
That's not going to tell you anything about how the Giants are at all, because
I know their logo. Yeah.
They only come back in the end, dude. It's like, no, but like if they come back, it's going to be in it. But no, I know that because I've watched them long enough. But that's really it. Like I'm so fucking surface level. Like I would have to like dive in and really learn, and for sure I agree with you that I'm more left and right, but
yeah,
I do believe in a lot of fundamental, you know, right-wing ideas, like 100% as well.
Sure.
You know?
And that's okay. Like, you don't, that's the whole thing, is like, you don't have to be dedicated to one side or the other. Like, you really don't have to be, you know, it's just, you can kind of, like I said before, it's like kind of you pick a topic and what are the conversations about it? You know, what are people saying about it? Hey, I think that what this person is saying, that makes sense. Oh, this person also makes sense. Yep. And then, like you're saying, you kind of formulate your own opinion on that.
Yes.
But you're definitely, no matter what your opinion is, I mean, you could be totally neither.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah.
But usually, you're probably going to say, like, oh, this makes a little bit more sense to me, but I also think this, you know? So you can kind of say, like, oh, yeah, I lean more right on that idea, but I also think these things that the left is saying.
You know what's interesting, too? My friend, Jack, who you met the other day, he was more of a right-wing guy, and now he's definitely trending more left. I think a lot of us really kind of trending more left, but kind of as time goes on. But it's very interesting because he could sell the right-wing stuff to me like it was a fucking piece of candy for 5 cents, dude. Like, I would just believe everything. Like, he was so compelling with what he was saying, but it was so healthy and enlightening almost for me to see him change, and for him to admit, like, I'm actually kind of understanding this other, like, I'm really kind of resonating more with this side now, and like, it's just that allows me to, that gives me a lot of hope. And what you're referring to here today as well is like, I hope that it doesn't go and, you know, get so crazy, or that these signs don't lead to this more deleterious negative outcome. And I don't either, man, and I don't get caught up in it, you know, and I feel like you're definitely deeper than me. I don't really, it's a conversation, and I knew that this conversation had to be had on this podcast, but I didn't know who was going to be the one, and I'm glad that it's you. But do you have an ideal circumstance of like, well, I hope that everybody finds their party, or I hope that there's more options, or I hope that this, or I just hope that, you know, the Civil War doesn't happen or something like that. Like, do you have an ideal circumstance that you kind of see playing out, even if it's the next election, great, or if it's beyond or before that?
All right, so gun to my head if I have to just make something up, because I have to say a really important thing about my view on these topics, I would guess, is that I don't know a lot about this stuff, and that starting from that vantage point seems very important. But if you want a guess, I'll give you a guess. Ideal, people start communicating more respectfully with a true curiosity about what the other side wants, instead of just painting them as a caricature and like shoving down your throat my views and sticking only with my party as a sort of tribal mentality. Like, this is my team, I never abandon my team, I always vote for my team. If you have a D next to your name, I'm voting for you, period. I don't care what your policies are or anything like that. I would like to see less of that. If people became a little more, not even a whole lot, but a little more curious about the political realm and began to investigate it more with, I'd call it like a scientific integrity. There's a phrase I heard from Richard Feynman, and the way he described it essentially is you're bending over backwards to see how you're maybe wrong about something, right? So you're very humble about what you think you know, and you're really trying to prove yourself wrong. Oftentimes, I'd like to see that, but to see a party member rise through the ranks, and not even a party member, just someone rise through the ranks of these elections who seems to have these qualities I'm describing, and openly, not just like behind closed doors I have them, but I won't show them in public because I'm afraid I'll lose a following. I'd like to see that. Maybe it can be done largely with people getting involved more on local political arenas, and almost like a Martin Luther King-esque character rising up through the ranks, because from the very, very vague memory I have of him in history class, he was a low-level activist for a while. Like, there were many people throughout the country that were about his level when it came to fame and influence over the movement. And so someone who's starting on that grassroots level that for whatever reason gets picked up by the tide of the majority of the population, they can turn their eyes on this person and be like, oh, that's a genuine, right? Honest, reasonable person that comes to office. That would be, I guess, the ideal situation. Maybe in some situations, big money gets a little less involved in politics and who gets elected in certain ways. Yeah,
I think there's people who are like that. I think Tulsi's like that. I think there's people who I get a good vibe from.
Yeah, Tulsi, I agree. I really liked her vibe. And Dan Crenshaw to talk about the Republican side.
It's like, dude, that's where I'm at. It's like, Crenshaw, I don't care about your... Like, he doesn't have like, you can be on a side. It's just, I want, like you're saying, like, it sounds cliche, but it's like, dude, a fucking genuine person. It's like,
what?
Like, really, and fucking wild concept. But we don't have that. But like, Tulsi, Crenshaw, like, they're different fundamentally. And there's stuff I don't agree with about Dan. There's stuff I don't agree with about Tulsi. Cool.
But I think that's fine.
That's not what we're pushing back against.
Yeah.
It's the full takeover of these are all the ideas that we believe in, and then this is our whole thing. It's like, and what I've mentioned many times on the podcast, which is 100% happening, nuance. It's gone. We only cherry pick when we want nuance. We only have nuance when we want it, and we don't have it when we don't want it. And I think for us to get that genuine person, we have to bring the nuance back. We have to understand the person next to us who's so rigid in their ideology. We have to accept it. You know, it's like we have to be coming back to, was this MLK? But it was like we have to be, it probably wasn't, but like we have to be that change. Like we have to be, we have to live our life the way that we would expect others to live it. It's like, I really do think that's kind of the extent. I'm a podcaster. That's all I know how to do, is just tell you what I'm doing. And if you believe me, great. If you don't, cool. You're not supposed to agree with everything, but maybe agreeing with the goal, you know, which is to uncover these things and have these conversations and hear the people out. That's where the nuance comes in, right? That's where we start to get closer to the genuine person.
And there's an interesting idea that pops in my head of, again, to take from the Joe Rogan Jordan Peterson latest podcast. They were talking about truth, pursuing truth in a conversation. And Jordan Peterson's guess was, one of the reasons why you're so popular is because you seem to honestly and with good intention aim at truth. And a lot of the things we say are wrong. We're human. There's a lot of flawed information we have rattling around in our brains. But you're attempting to be true. You're attempting to find the truth with all the stumbles that go along with that journey. And it's interesting to think that if you pursue that in your own podcast, which seems you seem to include nuance a good bit in what you're saying, caveats like, well, maybe I'm wrong and other people have these other beliefs, things along those lines. If people begin to see that and just, oh, you know what? If it resonates with them, I kind of like that, right? I like hearing that sort of conversation. That just seems like a good sort of way to approach reality when you're trying to figure things out or trying to talk with people. And maybe that can spread the culture of nuance of reasonable conversation. So in an interesting way, you going after your own goal maybe it could end up helping the political realm writ large, because people just begin to adopt that sort of relationship with curiosity, with conversation.
Bring it back, dude.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen a lot now.
And that, I wonder if one of the best ways to promote it is to just show all the good that comes with having this sort of view of life.
It's
right?
just, people can't know what I've taken out of this, because if they haven't done it, it's like, this has changed my life. It's changing my life right now, and for the better, completely. But if you don't sit down to like, I don't need the mics and the cameras and the lights here. Like, I don't need them. Like, I'll have the conversation without them.
It feels very cool with them, I must say.
It feels cool, for sure. And it's the reason that we can change people, or not that I'm trying to, but the reason people can change from it is because we turn the lights and the mics and the cameras on and release it, right? But fundamentally, like, from what I get something from these conversations, that if you don't sit down with 100 people for 2 hours, it's just I don't know if you can find a way, like, right, like, this is my way of doing it. If everybody can start to find their way of doing it, of calling somebody on the phone, talking to them for 5 minutes, whatever it is, like, that's gonna bring us one step closer, because we can only make a step at a time here, you know. But yeah, I'm the only thing I want to do is let people know that they can have a voice and have it be heard. It's like, my voice was never supposed to be heard. I wasn't accepted by a TV show. I wasn't a host on a super famous podcast. I wasn't, you know, a music star who had, you know, millions of fans and sold out shows. I was none of that. But I did this anyway. So it's like, at the end of the day, you know, use your voice, right? But find your way. Find your thing that gets you closer to the nuance, to experiencing somebody else's perspective, you know?
Other people's perspective. That, if I had to guess, I would say that's also an important piece of reestablishing prosperity or improving prosperity in our country. Just being curious about what other people think, what the worlds of information are like that completely disagree with what you currently believe. Did we talk about Daryl Davis?
No, but he's a fantastic. I'm talked about it on the podcast before. It's been a while, though.
Yeah, the fact that his just curiosity in a Klansman, and why do you believe that exactly?
Like, and for context, as a black blues musician,
yes,
who would play in front of KKK members who began to start to talk to them and have conversations with them, and didn't mean to convert them.
Yeah, that was one of the most fascinating takeaways I got from those conversations. I'm not going into the conversation to persuade you. I'm just curious, why do you believe what you believe? And when you begin to tell me if there's a disagreement that pops into my head, I'll bring it up. And like, what do you think about that disagreement? And that oftentimes, in his experience, people were willing to investigate that along with him. And I wonder if he went into that conversation with the intention to persuade, their barriers would go up.
Oh, 100%. If anybody's trying to persuade you of anything, your barriers are going to go up. What I know, I want to say from podcasting and then from sales, which has confirmed it now, is that I will never convince anybody of anything. They will only realize it for themselves, and they will put up any barrier possible to make sure they don't realize it. And I wrote this down. It's, we question everything except the things we never think to question. And that's the truth, right? And it is a self-realization. Like, if the self-realization, nobody's going to realize anything for you. It's all self. You know? Like, that's what a white supremacist KKK member converting out, right? Nobody's convincing that guy. He convinced himself. Right? Like Daryl said. He said he never convinced anybody. He didn't. He gave them logic. Right? They were running on emotion, and he gave them logic.
And even if they've
never seen a black guy talk in front of them. That's logic, bitch. Right? It's like, once you see that, you go, wait. So, all right, this guy's articulate. Okay, so now that barrier's down. Like,
and he's providing these facts. I go check them on my own. Like, oh shit, he was right about this thing.
Start to break down.
respectful conversation, because that's always something he emphasizes with it, the respect, the good intention.
And I think that's what we're both doing, and I think you especially, man. I really appreciate that you're doing something that I don't know, man. I don't know how it happened with me. Like, I just ended up continuing. I realized that, like, for some reason it's going to be really valuable, so I'm just going to keep doing it. It's going to be, first of all, valuable for me, and then second of all, maybe valuable for other people. And then I just kept going. You have your own reasons. It could be that. It could be something completely different. But the fact that you are dedicating to it, it's like, we don't have... One thing we never get back is time. You're giving people a lot of time to get, and I'm in this area too, 20, 40, 50, 100 downloads or whatever it is. Like, you know, that tells you that it's not for the wrong reasons, right? Like, it's for your personal development, the development of this person you're talking to, and then somebody else's development. Like, we're only giving away positive shit, dude. Like, I'm not here to pump us up, but it really, like, I could have made it my own little thing and never exposed it to the world, you know? But now we're taking the fucking chance. And if we weren't over 2 hours, dude, I wouldn't cut it. But I think this is a good place to stop. I think I bookmarked a lot of topics for us to hit on next time. And we overlapped. I don't even know if we overlapped any from my conversation on your podcast. I mean, you were a great interviewer. And
Ditto.
Thank you, man. And I think you really got your ear to the ground and you really listen to people. And I recognize it. In terms of what you want to do with your podcast, you know, I hit the 40 episode mark. It still felt like it was really new. But what does that look like for you? Like, is your main goal here just to continue to pursue these conversations and make them happen? Like, is there no strings attached to that? Or do you see a kind of bigger vision for it now that you're in this position?
I'm not sure. I've started to question the fundamentals about why I'm doing this and a lot of other things very recent, like literally the past few days. And as I dig down to, like, well, why am I doing this? Like, the heart of why I'm doing this. Okay, why am I doing this podcast? Because it feels good? Because it feels right? And also those other things I listed earlier. It's like, well, why do I trust those as, like, reasonable reasons? I'm not exactly sure. Maybe there's some measuring system that's tried to figure out what's been working that I've done in the past, and it's been keeping an emotional tally so I can kind of trust my emotions because they've led me right enough of the time that part of me trusts this emotional desire to want to continue with the podcast. And I have the more logically elaborated reasons I said earlier, but at the heart of that, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out a lot of why I'm doing this and what it's going to look like in the future. A lot of it's a big question mark at the moment. I will say, though, when I ask myself, what do I want to do? I'm still called to the podcast. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'll ask you again next year then.
Yeah, there you go.
Alex, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Thank you, Sully.
Tret, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anytime.
Where can people find you? I'll link it all in the description and show notes below, but
cool.
Let them know.
Find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat under neomatic.shaman, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, also on neomatic.shaman. And for the listening platforms, you could also type in Spirit of a Nation along with my handle. And yeah, that's how you'd find me.
All right. I'll link it all. I'll link my episode as well. We got into some varied topics. Yes. It's always fun to do the long form on the other end as as we're both doing. Yeah, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing specifically. I just really want to harp on it because it's a lot of work. It's hard to do. But with that being said, I say it every time, guys. This has been another episode of Bobcast Today with Alex Cortez. We are on all platforms, even the ones nobody uses. Peace.
This was fun.